Chelsea Clinton has a new podcast called That Can't Be True. This podcast is funded by the Clinton Foundation and currently has 25 reviews with an average of 2.3 stars on Spotify. So if you'd be so kind, head on over to Spotify today and give This Dumb Week a 5-star rating so that we can beat Chelsea Clinton. And with that out of the way, welcome to This Dumb Week, a weekly live Twitter space hosted by Alex Marinos and yours truly, Dr. Rollergator. Available in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and others. Alex, welcome back. Have you had a sufficiently dumb week?
Yeah, definitely. We're reaching the limits of my tolerance, but I think unfortunately that my tolerance will have to increase.
Well, you actually feel pressure. You're in a stress test right now. That's quite impressive.
Yes.
The pressure cooker is over Alexandros Marinos.
It's all right. I'll adapt.
All right, well, let's get some dumb news out of the way here. Washington Post. 100 skeletons found in home of man who looted historic cemetery, police say. Police investigators were staking out the historic 200-acre Mount Moriah Cemetery in southwest Philadelphia on Tuesday evening when their suspect finally emerged carrying a crowbar in a burlap bag. For months, mausoleums in the graveyard, some more than 100 years old, were being looted in the dead of night, police said. Finally, they believed they had found the perpetrator. Before they arrested the suspect, identified by police as Jonathan Gerlach, police said they could see numerous bones and skulls in the backseat of his car. Delaware County District Attorney Tanner Rouse said Thursday it wasn't the first time Gerlach, 34, had burglarized tombs in the area. Investigators wrote in an affidavit that when they searched Gerlach's home, they found more than 100 human skeletons, including mummified hands and feet and skulls on shelves. Some of the remains were 200 years old. These thefts happened, quote, under the cloak of darkness, very much secretive for public view, Rouse said. This guy did everything in his power to secretly and silently grave rob. Mount Moriah did everything they could to stop him from doing it, but as you can imagine, cemetery that size, it's very difficult. Gerlach had been charged with 574 counts, including 100 counts of abuse of a corpse, 26 counts of burglary, dozens more of desecrating a public monument, trespassing, and theft. According to court documents, he's being held under a $1 million cash bail at the Delaware County Prison. An attorney for Gerlach could not be reached for comment. Police said Gerlach admitted to stealing approximately 30 sets of human remains from Mount Moriah Cemetery, a site that's estimated to contain 200,000 graves, including Civil War veterans and historic figures such as Betsy Ross, who many believe is responsible for the first American flag. After Gerlach was arrested, police allegedly determined the burlap bag he was carrying when he left the cemetery contained more remains. Rouse said the macabre scene police found when they searched Gerlach's home was unlike anything they had seen before. Detectives walked into a horror movie come to life, he said. These remains include months-old infant and corpses that still had a peacemaker attached. Police found the remains in various states of display. Some were hanging, Rouse said, while others were pieced together. Some were just skulls on a shelf. Rouse added that the investigators are still trying to determine what Gerlach was doing with all these remains. According to the affidavit, Gerlach stated to police that he sold some of the remains online, but the vast majority were held in the basement of his home in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, a town about 70 miles west of Mount Moriah Cemetery. Rouse said that from November to January, Gerlach desecrated 26 separate mausoleums and underground burial sites. Police received their first call to investigate a burglary at Mount Moriah Cemetery on November 7th, according to the affidavit. A mausoleum had been broken into, its marbled flooring was destroyed, and one of the crypts underneath, which a deceased teenage girl born in 1854, was found empty, the affidavit said. Now, Alex, I would just like to point out that really, this is just a crime of timing. Because if he would have waited about 1,000 years, this would be considered archaeology.
That's right. But if he had waited 1,000 years, it would be a lot harder to clone people from their DNA of their remains. I am generally incredulous that graves of important scientists and stuff remain unguarded, given that it's like feasible to take their DNA and like make babies like them, I think.
Now, I mean, that would certainly change the market dynamics for some sperm donation banks, right? Is that?
Oh yeah,
an accurate statement?
Sperm donation and connected to grave digging, and you have I don't actually know what it's terrible either way.
Give birth to the next Einstein, or at least partially Einstein mixed with your terrible DNA.
With your retard DNA.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, that kicks off.
Retarded child instead of a full retarded. It was all yours.
Well, that kicks off the show today. You know, a grave robber with 100 bones in his house, or 100 skeletons, let's say. You know, I don't know how they exactly counted them. If they counted partial remains as an entire skeleton, or what. You know, I'd like a count of all the specific bones. Well, I mean, it sort of is necessary to paint the scene. Okay, 100 skulls is a little bit different than 100 complete skeletons, just practically speaking, right? There is a difference.
That would just make him an average Mongolian either way.
Okay.
In the Genghis era.
Now, here we're going to move on.
It's a matter of timing, really, and place.
It is, yes. Yeah, he could charge entry if there was something delayed on time of this desecration of corpses, right? He could charge people fees to enter what he would call a museum at that point.
It's just a detached portion of the cemetery, really.
Now we're going to move on to New York. And I don't know if this will become a segment, but in preparation for it becoming a segment, I had Sora quickly make a parody of the show Kids Say the Darndest Things for a version of Communists Say the Darndest Things.
Welcome back to Communists Say the Darndest Things, where sharing isn't just caring, it's mandatory.
So Sia Weaver is a person who was making rounds in the news this last week as the Mamdani administration in New York takes charge. And she had been catching some flack for previous comments that she made that I will play and introduce from a Fox 5 New York segment covering the controversies she has made.
Zohran Mamdani is standing by his new tenant advocate, who is now coming under fire for previous comments.
All right, it comes as he's set to make an appearance with his brand new school's chancellor today, a couple hours from now. Good Day's Robert Moses joins us with the details. A lot going on here, Robert.
Yeah, Dan and Tashani, a lot can change in this rapidly developing environment. But so far, Mayor Zohran Mamdani is sticking with Sia Weaver, the director of the mayor's office to protect tenants. This despite her controversial tweets. Her X account has been deleted. The mayor spent a good part of his press conference in Jackson Heights, Queens yesterday taking questions about Weaver. She is 37 years old and, like him, a Democratic socialist. Mamdani announced her appointment right after he was inaugurated on New Year's Day. In 2018, she tweeted, "Seize private property." In another tweet a year later, she called home ownership a weapon of white supremacy. The New York Post reported that Weaver's mother owns a home in Nashville worth about $1.6 million. Mamdani appeared to distance himself from her home ownership tweet, but then he defended her.
My focus as the mayor of New York City is to deliver stability in a city, and we know that one critical pathway to that stability is home ownership. The core issue at hand here is, what are we hiring this person to do? We are hiring them to stand up for tenants in a way that we haven't seen before, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Besides the tweets we mentioned, she also tweeted that she supports a No More White Men in Office platform, and in 2018 she wrote, "Impoverish the white middle class." She spoke about her past posts this week on New York One.
You know, those are certainly regretful tweets, and not something that I would say today.
You may remember that shortly after Mamdani appointed Kat DaCosta to be his director of appointments, the Anti-Defamation League found some of her past tweets denigrating Jews. She then resigned.
I accepted Kat DaCosta's resignation. Sia Weaver is someone that we hired to stand up for tenants across the city based on the track record that she had. Frankly, if we just look at the last few days of work that she has done as part of our larger city government approach to the housing crisis in the city, you can already see results, the kind of which we haven't seen for the past few years.
Mamdani is set to greet students and parents later on this morning with his new school's chancellor, Kamar Samuels. Then he will join Governor Kathy Hochul for an announcement. We'll see if he gets more questions today about Weaver and whether he still plans to stand by her.
We'll see.
Now, Alex, you know, there's a great track record in assigning communists to the task of trying to make things affordable. There is a very good track record, so I'm looking forward to seeing what Mamdani's appointments are able to accomplish in this first term of his.
I forget, do you live in part in New York State?
I do not live in part in New York State. I am in the Northeast, but I am not in New York.
General area, yes. Okay, well, I guess we'll find out. The thing to remember is that when Trump puts what was it, 200 billion into the housing market, or says Venezuela is only gonna transact with U.S. companies or stuff. He's no less a communist. Let's be honest.
You see, you can't get ahead of me here, sir, because I do have some commie Trump stuff
Excellent.
right following this, because
I did not think we would disagree on this one, just to be clear. I am looking forward to it, though.
Yes. He surprised me the other day with an announcement that he made, and I'm going to get to that. So Reason magazine actually had interviewed this Sia Weaver lady in the past, and she had given I'm going to play two more clips of her where she had given, sort of familiar communist rhetoric that is about her ideas with how to handle housing and private property.
What I am envisioning is a world in which the housing is owned by a collective and people are paying 30% of their income in order to live in their housing. If your income is zero, you pay zero. If your income is $500,000 a year, you're paying 30% of that. And the government is providing the government is the sort of owner, or not even the owner. The government doesn't have to be the owner, but the government is what's making sure all of that sort of works and cash flows.
The debt to GDP ratio right now is the highest since World War II. So how can the federal government also afford to start subsidizing rental housing costs?
The federal government prints money. The federal government can provide money for those.
So it's by printing money?
Sure.
So we got turn the money printer on ideas, which are always good. And we have one more clip here from Miss Sia Weaver.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Now, that's probably what she meant when she said she would phrase her tweets differently now, which is that she'd be very kind of vague. They'd have a different relationship with private property than they do now.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the questioner was right. When we're giving $1.5 trillion to the Pentagon, how the fuck are you going to spend on anything else? Man, I'm so miffed at Trump and I just cannot work out the outrage from Mamdani. I'm sorry. I'm all outraged out.
You gotta be able. Listen. You have to make sure all of your outrage is equitable. Okay, you have to spread it out evenly.
I'm not a communist.
Well, we are all communists now.
I reserve the right to allocate my.
We are
according to the market
all communists now, Alex. So moving on to what I'll call commie Trump. He posted apparently on Truth Social that got copied and pasted to Twitter/X. Please be informed that we will no longer let the American public be ripped off by credit card companies that are charging interest rates of 20 to 30% and even more, which festered unimpeded during the sleepy Joe Biden administration. Affordability! ! Effective January 20th, 2026, I, as President of the United States, am calling for a one-year cap on credit card interest rates of 10%. Coincidentally, the January 20th date will coincide with the one-year anniversary of the historic and very successful Trump administration. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again.
Also, the one year period will coincide with the midterm.
So just proclaiming, I don't know what mechanism he actually expects to utilize to carry out this idea of capping credit card interest rates at 10%.
The military, I assume.
But I imagine that
Commander-in-Chief, what else is he going to do?
That's going to be a very confusing period. I mean, not only do I think that credit card companies are going to be canceling or reducing people's maximum caps, their balances or their possible balances, in response to this, because, these numbers have to balance out somewhere. They're not going to, if you had, a maximum credit rate of let's say $20,000 on your credit card, they're not going to give you that for 10% if your credit rating didn't, didn't merit it.
Sure, high credit card caps are sort of a good thing for them.
Everything is a trade-off, sir. Everything is a trade-off, and so whether or not something is good for the individual.
I get a credit card cap where you've got like a liquid balance that you're moving left and right and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the credit worthiness to have $20K in terms of some other thing than your credit card, you probably shouldn't have it in your credit card. Just saying.
Listen, when I was growing up, my father was an engineer, and he actually had a decent income when he was employed. But when he wasn't employed, the spending didn't stop. And I was actually very impressed with the amount of credit card debt that he racked up and was able to then declare bankruptcy on later in life. I think there is a room for people to go for the high score just to see. Okay.
Amazing.
I think.
Well,
we only go around this. We only go around this once, right? So why not just see what you can do? As the E/acceleration people say, you can just do things, right?
Right. I mean, I'm always confused by why older people don't just get high on heroin all the time. It is, what are they gonna save their health for later?
So, any additional thoughts on the credit card scheme? Because it's an interesting thing to talk about, to expand on and not just move on from. But well,
look, here's the thing, right? I'm not sure. You're annoying me now because you're making me defend Trump.
That happens,
and I really don't want to. I truly don't want to, but I will because I'm a fair-minded person, of course, as everyone knows. So the thing is, banks are not exactly a market, right? They are a arm of the government that has extraordinary powers, including the creation of money, as we learned recently. So it's not exactly communism that the government tells arms of the government what to do.
I do think obviously that there's some simplicity and reduction in complexity that you're trying to get away with when you make that analogy, because the banking world is very complex. If you look at community-owned banks where the profit incentives are a little bit different than the corporate banks, the national corporate banks, I mean, there is still a lot of room for market
Sure. What I'm saying is, in order to be a bank, there are a lot of things that you have to be in sync with the government on, like a lot. It's like insurance, right? Insurance is not really insurance anymore.
In sync with the government, more in sync with the Fed, which is in part in sync with the government.
Yes, that's what I mean. The government, I mean in the broad governing, complex. But you have to play hopscotch over like an under. It's 3D hopscotch, I guess. A descendant of 5D chess. With a ton of regulations that metamorphosize what you are to a conglomerate of lawyers that somehow has to make money. But all that said, you have to see all of that in context. So I don't even know what to say with this. Of course, it's bad, but it's there's so many things this week that happened that show that there is zero. And I mean zero, less than zero interest in, letting the market do its thing by the administration. This is another one. Yeah.
Well, we haven't even begun to really start to acquire, federal companies yet, right? We only own 10% of NVIDIA or something. What was the amount that they?
That's right. I mean, I thought you were going to say acquire Venezuela, but fair enough. Yes, that too.
No. I mean, the literal. We are now partial owners of companies, right? So Nvidia and Bernie Sanders saying that's a good thing. We should do more of that. So Trump likes to have praise from people. So all he has to do is get a couple more approvals out of Bernie Sanders, and he's got the street cred to keep going, right?
Who says he doesn't reach across the aisle?
Yeah, exactly. Now. Speaking of leftists and leftist policies, apparently there was a little kerfuffle over in Berlin this last week. Alex, have you heard of this amidst all of the chaos of the rest of the global news?
It depends on which. You mean the power outage?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh yeah, I did hear
CNN. Thousands of Berliners lost power for days after climate activists struck. Amid heavy snow in the German capital and temperatures plummeting below freezing, nearly 100,000 people were left without power for several days after an alleged left-wing arson attack on Berlin's power supply on Saturday caused a major blackout. The activist group Volcano Group claimed responsibility for the attack, citing the role that fossil fuels and AI play in accelerating the climate crisis. Roughly 45,000 homes and more than 2,000 businesses in Berlin's wealthy southwestern districts were affected by the outage, which lasted more than 4 days. The outage is believed to be the longest in Berlin's post-war history. The attack on Berlin's power supply occurred in the early hours of Saturday morning when a fire broke out on the cable duct over the Tetlow Canal, which runs through the city's south. The blaze damaged several high-voltage cables near Berlin's Lichterfelde power plant. Authorities put the fire out, but not before the power had been cut around 6 a.m. The outage affected up to 45,000 households and 2,200 businesses spanning 4 districts in southern Berlin, including Nikolassee, Zeldhof, Winnesee, and Lichtenfeld. According to Stromnetz Berlin, the operator of the city's electricity network. The attack left people without power and heating amid nighttime temperatures of negative 10 degrees Celsius, 14 degrees Fahrenheit, disrupted overground train lines and hit mobile phone connections. The Volcan Group later claimed responsibility for starting the fire in a letter sent to police. We successfully sabotaged the gas-fired power station in Berlin-Lichtenfeld, said the letter, which had been circulated online. This, the group said, resulted in power outages in Berlin's affluent neighborhoods. Volcan Group apologized to the less wealthy residents of southwestern Berlin in the letter, saying that the goal was to target the fossil fuel industry and the action was a necessary measure against the expansion of fossil fuel-fired power plants in Germany. Power outages were not the goal of the action, the fossil fuel industry was, it said. We know we must stop this destruction. We know we are not alone. Don't give up hope for a world where life has space, not greed for money, power, and destruction, it said. Adding, people call us eco-terrorists, yet we respect life. They call us irresponsible, yet we take responsibility to end this imperial destructive way of life. Berlin Mayor Kai Wagner told reporters Wednesday that the incident was, quote, not a minor arson attack, not sabotage, but a terrorist attack by left-wing extremist organizations with massive consequences for the supply of many Berliners. So that's the story there, Alex. Where are you on the...
for the U.S. Army to intervene if the...
I am.
Where Berlin, the Berlin regime does anything bad to the protesters, or sorry, I'm confused.
I am.
Okay, but at least they stopped the AI, right? For how long did they stop the AI?
Well, the AI is what helped them get the power reconnected, I assume. So it's a sort of a Sisyphean task there. That's what happens when you approach the singularity, is it not? That you have the Sisyphean task of attempting to stop something that can repair itself quicker than you can destroy it?
Well, what I heard is actually that the cuts were pretty bad in that, for 5 days they had intermittent power cuts. It wasn't just the one, yeah.
What do you want to try to reclaim that thought there, because it kind of tapered off there?
Yep. Sorry. No, what I'm saying is it was more than just a one-off sort of cut for a few hours. It lasted for many days. It was pretty significant. I'm
sure they were doing a bunch of rerouting as they were trying to bring it back online, where they would have a temporary connection that they would have to then resever in order to reroute to a full network. Because I mean, you're not going to leave something damaged where you have to. The only way that you can get it back online is to repair the entire segment. I think you're going to be doing like stop gaps for the short term.
All I'm saying is that it was a remarkably effective campaign. I would not be surprised if they used AI to the planet.
Oh, okay. Hey, Chat GPT, Mr. GPT, thank you very much. Would you please be able to give us? Here's the schematic. Would you please give us your opinion on the best place to attack
a power station? Here's how you do it. If we're trying to defend a power station against attack by terrorists, which are the most sensitive components we should harden extra hard?
You play the blue team, Mr. GPT, and we'll play the red team, okay? And well, continuing down the path of international politics here, Trump tells Cuba to make a deal before it's too late. This is from the BBC. Donald Trump has urged Cuba to, quote, make a deal or face consequences, warning that the flow of Venezuelan oil and money would now stop. The U.S. president has been turning his attention to Cuba since U.S. forces seized Venezuela's leader Nicolas Maduro on January 3rd raid on its capital, Caracas. Venezuela, a longstanding ally of Cuba, is believed to send around 35,000 barrels of oil a day to the island. Cuba's foreign minister responded by saying his nation retained the right to import fuel, quote, without interference, while its president said, no one dictates what we do. I mean, they have a dictator, so that is kind of his job. You can't just usurp his job. That's not fair, right? Cuba's foreign minister, the Trump administration's tactic of confiscating sanctioned Venezuelan oil tankers has already begun to worsen a fuel and electricity crisis in Cuba. On Friday, it seized a fifth oil tanker and said it was carrying sanctioned oil from Venezuela. Quote, Cuba lived for many years on large amounts of oil and money from Venezuela. In return, Cuba provided security services for the last two Venezuelan dictators, but not anymore, Trump posted on True Social on Sunday. Quote, there will be no more oil or money going to Cuba. Zero. I strongly suggest they make a deal before it's too late. Trump did not specify the terms of a deal or the consequences Cuba could face. But Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez said the Caribbean island nation had, quote, the absolute right to import fuel from any willing exporter, quote, without interference or subordination to the unilateral coercive measures of the United States. He added that, unlike the U.S., Cuba does not lend itself to, quote, blackmail or military coercion against other states. Trump also referenced the raid to seize Maduro and his wife, Sila Flores, who is now facing drug trafficking and other charges in the U.S. Cuba has for years supplied Maduro with his personal security detail. The Cuban government said 32 of its nationals were killed during the U.S. operation in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. Trump said, quote, most of the Cubans are dead from last week's USA attack, and Venezuela doesn't need protection anymore from the thugs and extortionists who held them hostage for so many years. Venezuela now has the United States of America, the most powerful military in the world by far, to protect them, and protect them we will. Rodriguez said Cuba had, quote, never received monetary or material compensation for the security services it had provided to any country. While the Trump administration has not stated clear plans for Cuba, the U.S. president has previously said that a military intervention was unnecessary because the country was ready to fall. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated last week that Cuba's leaders should be worried, saying that he would be concerned if he were the Cuban government and that they're in a lot of trouble. So, Alex, which will fall first, Cuba or Iran? We got a race.
Cuba.
Cuba. Okay. Now, does that mean that
I listened to this account on energy called Doomberg? I don't know if I probably mentioned it to you a few times. It's not on X, so it's many people might not be exposed to it, but it's one of the most popular finance substacks out there. And does a bunch of podcasts in the guise of a green chicken, weirdly enough. And they were the ones I first heard talking about Venezuela being, in like almost foregone conclusion, months and months ago, potentially even a year ago. And they are also saying that Cuba is, in an extremely precarious position right now. So, no value judgment here, whether, it is as it should be, but he was very dubious that they can outlast Trump.
So in the breadth of the precarious situation they find themselves in, would it be strictly this particular scenario exacerbating problems, meaning that their supply of oil is now reduced significantly or hindered significantly? Or was it there's other items that they've been struggling with recently?
Well, look, they are under extreme sanctions, okay? You can't, like, when Trump says, like, oh, Venezuela is chronically mismanaging its economy, and then he was asking Halliburton, why did you exit Venezuela? When the answer was in 2019, because you sanctioned them, you moron.
Now listen, when they say that Trump sanctioned someone, Trump just says things and then other people react to what he says. He's not necessarily.
He's not really, yes. Anyway, okay. They just shouldn't have taken him that seriously. You mean? Anyway. Point being,
that was one of those 3 a.m. posts that are just, there to get people riled up in the morning. That wasn't
literally. I got it. The point being that, is it the communism? Is it the sanctions? Is it the particulars of a particular government, mismanaging the economy? Is it this? Is it that? I don't know. Point being, they are under a compounding set of stresses. And, removing the Venezuelan support, which they had worked quite hard to build up, is an additional substantial stress. This is a subject we will, I suppose, return to. The U.S. has developed a extremely sophisticated color revolution playbook that, works. And, it creates a situation where things look like different things happen that look one way and in fact are another. I mean, the one I'm most familiar with is Ukraine, but it's not the first or the last.
That very much is true. Now, as we expand to the international scene here, there were two things done by, or released by the State Department this week that sort of expand the idea of what we are, I guess, now doing in the global stage. And this is on the state.gov website. The other was posted to Substack because I guess the State Department has a Substack now, just like every independent
organization. Yes,
yes, exactly.
Content creator.
So withdrawal from wasteful, ineffective, or harmful international organizations. Today, in furtherance of Executive Order 14199, President Trump announced the withdrawal of the United States from 66 international organizations identified as part of the Trump administration's review of wasteful, ineffective, and harmful international organizations. Review of additional international organizations pursuant to Executive Order 14199 remains ongoing. The Trump administration has found these institutions to be redundant in their scope, mismanaged, unnecessary, wasteful, poorly run, captured by the interests of actors advancing their own agendas contrary to our own, or a threat to our nation's sovereignty, freedoms, and general prosperity. President Trump is clear it is no longer acceptable to be sending these institutions the blood, sweat, and treasure of the American people with little to nothing to show for it. The days of billions of dollars in taxpayer money flowing to foreign interests at the expense of our people are over. As such, the United States will be withdrawing from the 66 organizations that can be found here. As this list begins to demonstrate, what started as a pragmatic framework of international organizations for peace and cooperation has morphed into a sprawling architecture of global governance, often dominated by progressive ideology and detached from national interests. From DEI mandates to gender equity campaigns to climate orthodoxy, many international organizations now serve a globalist project rooted in the discredited fantasy of the end of history. These organizations actively seek to constrain American sovereignty. Their work is advanced by the same elite networks, a multilateral NGO-plex, that we have begun dismantling through the closure of USAID. We will not continue expanding resources, diplomatic capital, and the legitimizing weight of our participation in institutions that are irrelevant to or in conflict with our interests. We reject inertia and ideology in favor of prudence and purpose. We seek cooperation where it serves our people and will stand firm where it does not. Now, This is part one of the two segments here for what I'm going to read, but this is obviously something that I'm going to be more in agreement with because these projects, in my view, were always about attempting to have extra legal pressure and control over the United States, that these were never really the pie in the sky sort of optimistic versions that we claim them to be, that they were always sort of deceptively insidious in their nature. And it goes all the way back to the worst president that we've ever had, Woodrow Wilson, and the ideas that he sort of enshrined inside of the presidency as in his terms. So I've always been anti these sort of things. So, reducing our contribution to them is fine by me. Alex, I don't know if you are going to have a different take on that.
No. I mean, in abstract, I don't know what these organizations are. It's just fascinating to me that the administration is effectively saying, fuck international law. Which, by the way, when I say international law, you should hear the bilateral commitments we have signed and voted into U.S. law via the Constitution. But anyway, fuck that. Fuck the Constitution, because apparently the president can just declare, whatever, can just take military action, by himself, for, no imminent threat, nothing, just whatever. And so, I think this is more interestingly put together as a type of, I don't know, like one man sort of superpower that is apparently obstructed by nothing, which is fascinating. I don't know. Let's see where it goes.
All right. The second part was the Substack that I referred to. So it's the State Department's official Substack. And this is the header on there. We are rejecting the outdated model of multilateralism that treats the American taxpayer as the world's underwriter for a sprawling architecture of global governance. President Trump's withdrawal shows that the era of writing blank checks to international bureaucracies is over. So this is it's very related to the original post. But this is supposedly authored directly by Marco Rubio. The United States has played a central role in shaping the international order, from the Monroe Doctrine, which allowed nations in our region to flourish free from interference outside our hemisphere, to our pivotal role in the establishment of the United Nations, to serving as the primary security grantor under the North Atlantic Treaty Organization as the world's largest humanitarian donor. America's leadership has been unquestionable. Leadership requires difficult choices and the ability to recognize when the institutions created to promote peace, prosperity, and liberty have become obstacles to those goals. What we term the international system is now overrun with hundreds of opaque international organizations, many with overlapping mandates, duplicative actions, ineffective outputs, and poor financial and ethical governance. Even those that once performed useful functions have increasingly become inefficient bureaucracies, platforms for politicizing activism, or instruments contrary to our nation's best interests. Not only do these institutions not deliver results, they obstruct action by those who wish to address these problems. The era of writing blank checks to international bureaucracies is over. So there's a repeat of the portion that I read from the other posting. It is no longer acceptable to invest the American people's hard-earned tax dollars in institutions that cannot demonstrate results, accountability, or respect for our national interests. It is an abdication of America's global leadership to continue funding and promoting organizations that obstruct solutions to the problems facing the world today, such as affordable energy, economic growth, and national sovereignty. Continued U.S. participation in them only legitimizes their existence as a model and has failed billions around the world. From the UN Population Fund's long history of ethical violations, including funding coerced abortions, to UN Women's failure to define what a woman even is, to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change's squandering billions of dollars on funding for climate alarmist, anti-energy investment in the West Bank and Gaza, to the UN Parliament Forum on People of African Descent espousing openly racist policies in support of global reparations. These organizations boast a consistent record of dysfunction, if not outright malice. The American people, our partners, and the billions around the world who look to the United States for leadership deserve better. Our continued participation in organizations that do not reflect our values or serve our interests should be abandoned. Would be an abandonment of our national duty. The organizations that we have chosen to withdraw from have been selected after a lengthy review of their purpose, actions, efficiency, effectiveness, necessity, and most importantly, their ability to help us achieve U.S. national interests. Those we are withdrawing from are by no means the only offenders. Our review of the United States' participation in international organizations remains ongoing. Now, no mention of Doge assisting in this process, Alex, nor Grok. So I'm wondering whether or not they've actually started to utilize the AI that we've been boasting about in incorporating into these processes?
No, I think it's more like they just looked at a list, and if they didn't like the name, they crossed it out. Though a lot of the things he listed there were the UN, which I'm not sure we have withdrawn from yet. So.
Well, one can hope.
One can hope, yes.
One can hope.
It would be kind of awkward to be hosting the headquarters of an organization that you don't belong to. But I will say something.
I would say we do that, and then we just wait until someone notices and complains.
Well, I will say, though, Gator, that you say that, these organizations were meant to constrain the United States sovereignty. And, maybe to some extent they were, but they're also meant to constrain other countries' sovereignty. And I think this is another theme where these are not these organizations were not constructed by the Soviet Union, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They were by and large constructed.
I squarely said Woodrow Wilson was to blame, so that's the U.S. through and through.
Absolutely,
that's
100%.
Yes. That is as American as apple pie, as they say.
Yes, but not just the concept of them, but even the organizations themselves are largely constructed by the U.S. and often imposed on others. And so this is almost like a withdrawal of this kind of U.S. global framework from existence, which. As sort of related to our discussion last week, we sort of mentioning that certain things that were covert are now being made a little bit more overt. Exactly. Instead of having insidious, NGOs everywhere that are undermining, different governments, including our own, for sort of autonomous purposes that are, self-perpetuating. Now we just say, hey, we're going to kidnap your leader if we don't like you. I mean, that's a little bit more honest, Yes.
Then we're going to teach school children, and all of a sudden we're going to teach them like garbage that ruins their brains,
Sure. Yeah, I still don't think that the American people are quite ready to see themselves as global pirates, but I continue to monitor the situation.
Well, if the civil unrest goes on, a lot more people will wind up losing an eye, and they'll have the patches already to support the look. So
we'll all be ready for President. Oh my God, what's his name? I can only remember him as Eye Patch McCain.
I know here now it's on the tip of my tongue, and I'm gonna.
Oh my God!
I'm gonna feel stupid for not being able to do it. You've jinxed me, sir. You have ruined my ability to connect names.
I will fetch the name Dan Crenshaw.
There you go. Okay.
You put Eye Patch McCain on Google or your favorite search engine, and Dan Crenshaw's Wikipedia article shows up helpfully.
Well,
yes.
we have a memorial service to give here real quick. So we're gonna have a moment of silence after this. Don't get too choked up, Alex, okay?
I'll try.
We want to note a change for us here at PBS News.
Due to federal budget cuts, we've had to make the difficult decision to rework our staffing and programming. And this Sunday, our PBS News Weekend team will sign off the air. PBS News Weekend anchor John Yang is here with us now. And John, we're going to miss you so much. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. You and the team have done incredible storytelling and covered major breaking news every weekend.
That's right. Weekend after weekend, you and the team brought such rigor and heart and care to the stories that you covered. You will be deeply missed, and we are deeply grateful for all of your work.
Jeff, thank you very much. And Jeff, you know what this is like. You sat in the chair I occupy now, the founding anchor of this program. This has been a lot of news on weekends. I can think back to the October 7th attacks in Israel, the first assassination attempt on President Trump, President Biden dropping out of the presidential race. Mm-hmm. And this is, as I like to call it, the small but mighty team that handled all these stories week in and week out. We're proud of the creativity, the dedication they brought to each and every segment week in and week out. I'll be leaving PBS News at the end of the month as I step back from full-time work, but I'm delighted to say that many members of this team will be sticking around. They'll be producing some exciting new programming that you'll be seeing in the coming days and coming weeks, and so we thank them and look forward to that.
So, Alex, I hope you're okay. If you need any time off from commenting to gather yourself with the loss, I can understand.
I was going to suggest they use our program instead. I mean, we definitely cost less.
We do cost a lot less. I don't know.
We're also on the weekend. Surely, how much better could they be?
All right, we got one Traces of AI Dystopia article, Alex. Only one before we move on to. I know. I don't know if I just missed the stories this week or if it was a slow week, but this one takes us back from a couple weeks ago when we discussed the police department's use of Draft 1 from Axion, which was going to help them write their police reports. Alex, if you recall that story.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Fox 13 now. Ribbit, artificial intelligence programs used by Heber City Police claim officer turned into a frog. An artificial intelligence that writes police reports had some explaining to do earlier this month after it claimed a Heber City officer had shapeshifted into a frog. However, the truth behind the so-called magical transformation is simple. The body cam software and the AI report writing software picked up on the movie that was playing in the background, which happened to be Princess and the Frog, Sergeant Keel told Fox 13 News. That's when we learned the importance of correcting these AI-generated reports. Earlier this month, the department began testing two pieces of AI software, Draft 1 and Code 4. Code 4 was created by George Chang and Dylan Nguyen, both 19 years old and MIT dropouts, kicked off earlier this year. The software generates police reports from body camera footage in hopes of reducing paperwork and allowing officers to be out of the field more. Draft 1 was the software used to create the Disney-inspired police report. To see how Code 4 works, Fox 13 News rode along with Keel for a demonstration as the department staged a mock traffic stop. Hi, I'm Rick with the Heber PD. The reason I'm stopping you today is for, Keel said during the demonstration. Back at the police department, the AI generated a report with timestamps from the mock traffic stop. The software works in both English and Spanish and can track tone and sentiment as the people are talking. Keel says one of the major draws is that the software saves them time, and as writing reports typically takes 1 to 2 hours. I'm saving myself about 6 to 8 hours of work weekly now. Keel said, I'm not the most tech-savvy person, so it's very user-friendly. Code 4 costs about $30 per officer each month. Keel said that the trial run for Code 4 wraps up next month, but the department officials say they plan to continue using the AI technology. It's just a matter of which system. So, Alex, you do definitely need that human in the loop still, because the AI might say that your police officer has turned into the frog by mixing the Disney movie with your report.
I feel like this is more of a Traces of AI utopia, but...
Okay.
I see how.
Well, it would make the regular court, like it would make the going to court and watching a trial publicly much more of an event. You could possibly sell tickets and have government fund itself that way, right? By having fees for watching the trials.
All the streams, put Easter eggs in there. Now you're starting to think like an entertainment.
And then And the chaos of the fact that the police report says that he turned into a frog is part of the defense's dramatic turn to get their client off on all charges.
You can add the laugh track and everything. It'll be so tremendous. Please, nobody pitch this to Trump. He might actually.
Now, on the level of AI dystopia, this is certainly minor because we all know that it's understandable why the AI would do this. My general pessimism involves the way that people tend to get lazier and lazier as things take on more and more of the responsibility. Now it becomes a burden to them to oversee it. Like they scan it, they're looking at it, and it looks fine from a smell test, but they don't actually give it the fine-tooth comb, because I watch that happen in everyday life when people review other humans' work. They just sort of scan it and barely read. As software developers tend to know when they're arguing back and forth with someone outside of the department saying, as per my last email, pointing out the things that they've already said that people glossed over. So I imagine, there can be definite additional constraints on these systems to double check to make sure that nothing absurd is being said. You could have an overseer agent saying, hey, read this before you hand it over, and say, is anything odd, like the officer turning into a frog, that might not make sense? Could you flag it, please?
While it might sound, insane to people to say, like, well, if you are having trouble with people conducting the supervision of the AIs, why don't you automate that too with AIs? This actually does work.
It can. It'll have its own downsides too, but yes, it does. You can create human-like oversight in that sense and have it have similar types of outcomes to degrees.
Look, I continue to think that the best way to prevent these kind of problems is with what's called consilience. So you sort of unify multiple as independent as you can make them streams of evidence and data. And then from there try to construct an image of reality. If you have a single signal, like this case with the body cam, it's harder to retain full signal, or whatever you want to call it, if you're asking an AI to summarize, because it's there's no rails rails are two. If you have a single rail, you can lose balance, to make a metaphor.
Right.
But, I don't know. That's a general principle. In this particular situation, I just don't think these problems have staying power, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, it's the kind of problem that the next year's model is not going to have, or is going to have a lot less.
And so we just have a year of chaos in the courts, but that's nothing new.
No, don't use it until it gets good enough. I'm not saying.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There's also that option, Gator.
All right. Well, I mean, listen, you don't want to have FOMO. Okay. You don't want to be the police department that's all backwards and still doing things, by phone call. And, if the other police departments have telepathy, you want telepathy. You don't want to.
Look, I want to add something here, which is that there is something insane about the fact that, a cop spends like a day a week literally just writing out paperwork, right? And it's probably more than that. The demands of a bureaucracy have become absurd, and, a different approach to the problem might be that, you try to actually find what those are and remove them, rather than just using AI to sort of,
I'm sure you can imagine that some of it is due to the tensions between civil liberties and law enforcement, right? So
that's really the problem. As organizations scale larger and larger, you just get these monstrous sort of procedural spaghetti monsters that are what they are, and they don't, it's not like they fix the problem or anything.
Sure,
but they cover sufficient number of asses to be imposed on the little people, and the world goes on.
Well, I want to invite anyone up to comment who has any comments so far on the things we've discussed before we wind up moving on to what I imagine will fill the rest of the time, which will be that tiny little country over in the Middle East.
No ice shooting.
Walk. No, the shooting I didn't add to this because there's not too much. I mean, listen, we can have a brief discussion on it, but I didn't prepare much material for it because to me, it will the argument left and right over not politically speaking left and right, but just back and forth over whether or not the cop was justified is going to ultimately be arbitrated in the courts. We all can have our opinion about whether police should be permitted to respond in that form, whether the cop, depending on which law he would be beholden to, which would be local law, state law meaning, or federal law, whether he adhered to the policy as prescribed and was in his allowance. All of those things we can all form opinions on, and I can form my own opinion on as well. But none of us will arbitrate it. It'll be arbitrated in the courts or a lack of charging of the officer, in which case we can watch video all day long and argue about whether or not he was hit sufficiently hard to explain why he might have felt compelled to draw his gun. We can argue all of that, and we could even spend time, which we could, going into the tactics that protesters are using, where the entire goal is to try to create situations to use for propaganda purposes, usually not hoping that someone dies, of course, but attempting to create situations of conflict that place officers or government officials in untenable positions, so that the only set of reactions they possibly can have are negative and usable for public propaganda. We could talk about all of that, but I don't. In this particular individual instance, I didn't prepare anything to do it, because the main argument is whether or not the cop had should have pulled his gun, had the right to shoot or not. And I think it's tragic. It's a tragic event all around, and that's just really like where I settle.
I guess in my attempt to let's have a brief conversation on that while we wait for people to
sure, absolutely
stand up. As you say, there's a lot of standard takes we could regurgitate, which we generally try not to. So I'm trying to sort of see this from another perspective, or try to figure something out. As you kind of saw, and maybe some of the people in the audience have seen as well, I tried to sort of synchronize all the angles into a unified video, which unfortunately was not. I didn't find it particularly helpful.
I have one recommendation for you. The next time you do that, attempt to juxtapose them on the screen as they represent the angles that you're going for, to the best.
I wasn't going for any angle. I was just trying to just put them all. Like I remembered somebody did this for the Trump assassination, the first one in Butler, and it was particularly useful. So I just tried to recreate that. I could have done more work to make it better, but having spent a day on it, I thought, you know what, this isn't really productive, but I put it up because, if I spend a day on it, it's probably worth the tweet. Yeah. The one side fact I should mention is that I didn't use like Premiere or anything. I wrote a custom tool to do this with Cloud Code, which is.
I did see you mention that. Yeah.
It was remarkable to me. Like I literally just said like download all the clips, put them in an
editor. Did it use FFmpeg?
I didn't even know what it used. Honestly, I didn't even get to that.
That's the vibe coding way. I don't know how it did it, but I asked it to get it done. So, it did.
That's right. I have. No, it's in the browser, so I'm assuming it was.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't FFmpeg. But I basically had like three screens. One was like synchronizing working with individual clips. One was arranging them all together and cropping the general thing, and one was just playback and export. But it was just remarkable in that regard. But again, the result was not anything amazing. I thought, I don't know, some people found value in it, which is nice. But having spent a bunch of time looking at those videos, I maybe I have some additional sort of observations that people it seems they haven't heard of, or at least I don't see them represented much in the discourse. First of all, the initial event that actually triggered the cascade of actions was not of the driver and was not of the shooter. It was of the other agent who said, "Get out of the car! Get out of the fucking car!" and just like charged right into her, tried to open her door and reached into her car. Okay, that is the guy that starts the rapid sequence of events that ends up with her dead. And Now, it is my understanding that ICE agents are not allowed to actually do that unless they have placed a civilian under arrest for some crime they have witnessed. And he did not say anything like you're under arrest or whatever. So to my understanding, that guy was definitely not allowed to do that.
Now let's assume for a moment, well, real quick, let's assume that winds up not necessarily being the case. Okay, that in that particular context, he is giving what they call a lawful order for the person to exit the vehicle, and that failure to adhere to that is an additional reason for escalation by that agent.
Or execution? I doubt it.
Now, outcomes are not adjudication. So, the events unfolding and having an outcome are not strictly
well, they shot at her.
Verdict.
So if you're saying like this justifies shooting at her, I mean, what the intent was to make a minor scruff?
Well, the intent of ordering her out of a vehicle or taking the action of attempting to remove her forcibly from her vehicle was not necessarily to set up a sequence of events that wound up in her getting shot.
Right. Okay. But all I'm saying is my understanding is that ICE agents specifically are not allowed to do what he did. Okay. That's my assertion. And I can refer you to material. Now, leaving that aside, the other thing is that if a car is coming right at you and you are so close that it actually does touch you, shooting at the person does not actually stop the car. You're not shooting at the brake pedal. You're shooting at the human that's driving the car. And if you want the car to change its behavior, instead of whatever, like shooting the person is not, a guaranteed way to stop the car, right? You're better off just for your personal safety. If you find yourself armed with a car coming right at you and being like really, really close to you, I do not advise you to shoot the driver. Just say, so that's another thing that I think is getting missed. That like everybody's thinking, well, she was coming at him, so he had to stop her. Shooting at the person is not a stop her type of thing. And of course, other people have noted that even if the first shot was somewhat justified, the second and third one have nothing to do with defending himself. But you could say it was in the heat of the moment, whatever. But I just find it very. I think
if you find, I think you would find one of the reasons why I didn't prepare a lot for this is because I think you will find that as you go down each one of those points that you're making, you are not going to find something that is universal and consistent when it comes to that interpretation. That
all I'm saying is that I'm trying to highlight issues or concerns or whatever angles that are not typically much discussed.
I find a lot of the arguments people are raising to be insufficient to have a sophisticated conversation on the subject. But a sophisticated conversation goes many layers deep. And as you already know, we are always behind on covering things on this program. So,
anyway, but I do shudder to think what will happen if it shows up in court that she was killed by the second and third shots, not the first one. Okay? That will be a far harder conversation to have than if she was killed by the first. So I don't know. It's a messy situation. By the way, I'm not saying like go out and protest ICE or get in the way of police, whether you agree with what they're doing or not. These are people with guns, and I don't know what you think you're gonna accomplish by leaving your children as orphans, which is apparently what this woman did. It's I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't make me happy that this occurred at all in either direction. Meaning, like that even if I think that what the protesters are doing is in bad faith and for ends I don't necessarily support, even though I'm not necessarily in favor of the degree to which the deportation process is going on. Like we, regardless of what my opinions are on who's, let's say, more politically correct and politically in the right, rather, regardless of that, it does not make me happy that something like this occurred. And even if I felt,
you know what? I think this is a minimum standard that people should be setting and aren't. Just as the right was horrified at the celebrations of Charlie Kirk's death, the common sort of refrain was like, even if you disagreed with him, you don't have to celebrate his death, even if you disagree with him vehemently. The same is happening on the right, and it's absurd. Anyway, yeah, that's all I had to.
I can agree with that. Like I'm not certainly I'm not mocking her death. I'm not mocking her as a person, even though hypothetically speaking, I could make a caricature of her the same way others are making caricatures, and it's not necessary. The woman is no longer with us. Whatever actions.
There is a way to see this as two people, each trapped in their own sort of systems and frames of thought and roles that they gave themselves or were given by others or whatever, right? On a collision course that ended how it ended. You don't have to empathize with being an ICE agent or with being, I don't know, an ICE watch protester that's trained to disrupt what they're doing, to understand that it's a tragedy either way. I guess the conversation becomes more interesting when we're talking about like, okay, well, moving forward, how should society be structured to avoid things like this happening, whether legally or morally or whatever. But that's, yeah, as you said.
I mean, there's another reason I didn't, like if we talk about the numerous reasons I thought of when I decided not to include the topic, was that there's so many angles I could take on the subject that it just wouldn't do service to bring it up in the way that we can really talk about it, which is what we're kind of doing at the moment. Sort of just saying it's tragic and whether he was in the right to the degree where he would be found not guilty if brought to trial, or whether they would bring charges at all under the circumstances. That'll happen whether we agree with it or not.
Look,
the levels of complexity of the whole situation go so many degrees, though, because we do have activists, and the activists have decades of history that we could go over, where the deficits of the law enforcement or government personnel in managing propaganda, as far as silly as it may seem that the government might have a difficulty in playing the propaganda game, there is decades upon decades of concerted development of tactics to engage in this type of behavior, to where, like, and the easiest way to see it is when you have the large protests and you have the Antifa / Black Bloc characters with their umbrellas everywhere, so that they can block people who have cameras attempting to film activity that they don't want filmed. Okay, the patterns of behavior that
the government or not the government.
Not the government. The Black Bloc characters, the Antifa characters.
They're not the government.
They are not the government. No. Well, they can be sometimes. You can't have. Yes. Okay. Point taken. You can't have the infiltrators at points.
How would you know?
It could be COINTELPRO, which is, as an aside, a wild story. Not COINTELPRO specifically, but a wild story I have accumulating for a later episode here.
Yeah. Look, you are of course correct that there is deep sort of development of techniques to interfere with law enforcement. And there is deep development of counter techniques, right? There's an arms race effectively on both sides. Another observation, by the way, I made, and I'm not sure if he was doing it on purpose or not, but if you actually, again, because I've spent quite a bit of time looking at all the angles, one thing that is not immediately apparent is that he is standing in exactly the position that makes it extremely hard for her to exit without running him over, because there was another gray car on the other side. So she really has a very narrow corridor to go through.
Right.
This is why she had to back up, actually. So, and from what I hear, that is part of, a counter playbook to prevent people from leaving. Though, if you have her plates, I don't know why you want to prevent her from leaving. I'm not saying that I'm sure he did that, but he could totally have been.
Understood.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Paul Ramirez, thank you for holding. Donald J. Trump, PhD. I've been inviting you up. I don't know if you're having technical problems, as you sometimes do, coming on up. But I am attempting to get you on up here, and I'll keep trying until you. Oh, there you are. Okay, we'll let Paul Ramirez go first, and then Donald J. Trump finally is up here. Paul Ramirez. Uh-oh. Paul, your sound is not working, so you're not coming through. Can you try one more time? And if not, we'll have to go to Donald J. Trump. We got dead air at the moment. Nope. Paul, sorry, you're not coming through at the moment. Maybe if you exit out and come back in, we can get you back on up. We're going to move on to Donald J. Trump while, Paul, you keep trying to get your audio working.
Hello, am I coming through this time?
Yes, you are.
All right. No, I just wanted to give kind of so I've done a lot of shooting in my life, like tactical, or dealt with rules of engagement, dealt with all sorts of crazy situations, one of which I described to Alex this week. So when you take these things into consideration, you have to take in the totality of everything that's going on. So that woman had been blocking ICE, according to witnesses, all day, so they knew who she was. On top of that, if you look at the officer's camera, they knew he was ICE. They were taunting him, so they knew what they were doing. There wasn't any surprise. So when that officer came over, so if I'm an ICE agent and I'm moving around, and so ICE is also allowed to detain, they're federal law enforcement, so I don't know where this thing came about that they're not allowed to interact with American citizens. They're 100% allowed to arrest American citizens who are
I think that came down, just to clarify that one part, I think that comes down through a game of telephone where they are not allowed to ask United States citizens to prove that they are citizens. And therefore, you can't just go up to arbitrary United States citizens and show your papers and have the expectation.
Sorry, I want to clarify what I said, because that's not what I said. What I said is they are allowed to arrest somebody if they witness a crime. They're not allowed to just grab somebody without arresting them first.
Right, but they had witnessed a crime at that point.
But they have not arrested her, just to be clear.
Right, but you can detain.
Arrest, magic words.
Right, but getting out of.
I said, to be clear.
Right. Oh, no, I'm not gonna, but I'm also saying, like, so there's common things within so if you're going to say someone, you can just say, get out of the car. At that point, you are technically detained by federal law enforcement, which is legal for them to do.
And disobeying a lawful order. Disobeying a lawful order is a cause for
sorry, arrest or get out of the fucking car is not an arrest.
Well, he said, get out of the car, get out of the car, and get out of the fucking car. Now, you can argue that, but the point is, she didn't go until her wife tried to get into the car, found it was locked. At this point, she backed up, which now she is felony fleeing the arrest, and she is felony fleeing federal law enforcement. And then she said, drive, baby, drive. She put it in drive. Now, at this point, the vehicle's a weapon. It doesn't matter whether it hits him. It's just like if someone takes a shot at me and misses, I can dump my mag into them to drop them, right? Like, it doesn't matter whether they miss. It also doesn't matter what their state of mind, their mens rea is. The point is, she put the car, she drove it towards him. At that point, it doesn't matter how many rounds. He could have mag dumped. He could have put every round in his pistol into her. It doesn't matter. Once you initiate the shooting, you are obligated to engage that target until they are no longer a threat. Now, you are right. A vehicle that is moving can still be a threat. But at this point, he is obligated to protect himself. And there was also LE down the street. So if she has shown the want or the need or the ability to hit him, and he shoots her, and he can argue that, now you can say this is all morally incorrect. That's a fair argument. But as far as legally, I think he's pretty much covered as that being a good shoot. He followed the rules of engagement. The only thing you can really argue is him in front of the vehicle, which tactically isn't straight, but that's not defiance of the law, and it's especially not in defiance of Minnesota law. And that's about it. Other than that, rules of engagement wise, like just on a pure rules of engagement, amoral, take the morality out of it, on a pure rules of engagement, that's a good shoot.
Yeah, I actually didn't comment on what Gator said. I don't think this guy is going to be found guilty in court, because there's just so many ways for law enforcement to get away with stuff like this. I don't have any hopes that he'll have a, an appropriate trial, let's call it. I'm sure there's a lot, the authorities are writing their own rules, and I'm sure they're putting a ton of leeway for them to do whatever the fuck they want whenever they want it. I don't, if we're talking about like what's going to happen in a trial, I might not think that he should have done what he did, but I don't think that the law is going to agree with me.
Well, the surprising thing to me on this whole thing is it used to be, if you were a protester, like you do that stuff, right? Because they used to do that, right? And what you do is you take your arrest, and then some NGO bails you out that night and you get a misdemeanor on your record and whatever. So, yeah, I don't know where the rest of this came from.
That's part of the wider conversation that I didn't necessarily think we should delve into today, because it's part of the activist tactics, which is the funding of being able to have an accumulation of, let's say, a large accumulation of misdemeanor charges, where the funding is there to quickly get you bailed out, so that the individual cost to the people that, let's say your hired guns is low, and that you can continue to keep up the pressure as an entire unit. Like, those types of activities are incorporated into this.
All I want you guys to be doing when you make these assessments is consider if this happened on J6 or something, or this was Ashley Babbitt, or whatever. There's authority is a blind.
Ashley Babbitt dying was just as sad, but it's also what gets categorized sort of into the same bucket with me. I did not rally to her defense or battle cry.
Sure. I just know that there are people who definitely took opposing views on that, and of course there are specific semantics you could grab onto. I'm just saying, like, broadly, I guess I tend to see things from an authority versus people point of view. I don't reflexively take the side of the authorities. Because they just have a ridiculous, they're ridiculously overpowered, both legally and physically, in most situations. So that's why I take a critical view, but that's just my bias.
I am of the same or similar belief to you of that, but the dynamics winds up being too normative for me, meaning
I don't say I always do. I'm just declaring my bias. That's all.
Mm-hmm. I'm just. Go ahead, Don.
I was just going to say, can I make a quick comment on the Jan 6 thing? Just not politically or anything, but with Byrd, once again, it's like, yeah, authority, but there's individuals making the shot. And like, Byrd may have a lot of things wrong with him as a person, right? But as far as like the shot on Ashley Babbitt is probably good, because once again, you have to take in the totality of the situation. There's a riot on one side of the building, there's peace on the other side, and I know how these units operate, their comms plan was completely crap that day. So, and you could tell, because right after she shot, if you watch the outside video, there's a tactical team that was down the stairs that hadn't moved yet, and that's probably because there was utter confusion on the radio as to what was going on, and they didn't know where the blue on blue section was going on or who was doing what. So as far as Byrd is concerned in that situation, he had just cleared out 535 lawmakers. There's a tunnel all these people can access. He doesn't know how armed they are. He's probably listening to panic radio traffic. And he probably, and those three officers who have 45 rounds apiece with pistols, think they're the last defense against a massive armed mob. Whether or not it's true, that's probably what his belief was in that moment.
Yep. Well, at least you're consistent. And that is, I don't mean that sarcastically. It's important.
Paul Ramirez. Yes. Paul Ramirez, I can hear you. You've been very patient. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate y'all. And the one thing I think about a lot is the potential for false flag events. And even if this isn't a false flag event, we have to be in my opinion, we have to be cognizant of not overreacting in a way that hurts ourselves. So, okay, let's say hypothetically speaking, this is a one-off where some cop overreacted. We can't just destroy a city, or I mean, oh, maybe we could, but I mean, look, I default on the side of, I don't want to live in a totalitarian state where cops can act any way they want. But at some level, though, we should, or in my opinion, we should think about like false flag events and having, like some actor creating a autoimmune response in societal level where we, ultimately achieve their goals because we tear down the structures of civilization in response to it. And I'm not saying this is it. I'm not saying that this is it, but that should be part of the conversation. Is like, okay, if you're an enemy combatant of a foreign nation of some sorts, maybe we shouldn't, we should be aware that like, okay, maybe our police infrastructure or some whatever infrastructure caused this to happen. I'm not saying it did. I don't think it did. But we should always be cognizant of that's a vulnerability ever since 9/11. Like we should be aware that like, ever since George Floyd, that it's very easy to have our cities up in, I don't know, causing destruction or, and right. And that's all I had to say. Like, it's just something I think about. That's just a framework I think about.
You raise a very important point, Paul, and I want to maybe reframe a little bit of what I said, and maybe Gator, this will bring us a little bit closer together. But I think there's very good potential that there's a higher sort of narrative desire to split people, especially left and right, whether it's the Kirk situation or this one, and the powers that be don't want any sort of coordination between the two sides. So they like events like this, and this could be driven by the protesters or by the forces in authority right now, or some coordination between them. So the white and black sort of, this is the protesters and this is the authorities, and they're clearly fighting against each other. Sometimes that might not be as clear.
So I would say I would take that and run with it and say separate the, let's say, lower level people, the frontliners, okay, and then think about the people who are orchestrating it more. So the people higher up on the activist scale, not the people on the front lines who are taking the lessons, taking the courses, watching MSNBC, getting all riled up, and not the people on the front lines in the government. But imagine it, I've described it similar to the way that the Batman and Joker exist, that they kind of need each other in order to have their own identity, that the Joker doesn't exist without the Batman and the Batman doesn't exist without the Joker. And that's the nerdiest thing I'm going to say today, I promise. That there is, like, so the government, we know the government likes to take opportunities to increase its power when it has the let's say moral authority, or at least the moral winds behind its back. Okay. And the classic example would be the Patriot Act after 9/11. Everyone can kind of understand that as like government overreach, taking an opportunity to have something that was sort of already in the works, waiting for a moment to be able to try to get it pushed through Congress, or an amalgamation of things that were waiting. Similarly here, the government can use an opportunity like this to say we need more expansive laws on X, Y, and Z. And most recently, there was the elevation of classifying Antifa as a domestic terror organization. Now, I don't like the rules of that exist when we talk about us elevating things to the word terrorism, because they do wind up having a whole bunch of pseudo extra legal affordances that get really concerning, particularly when we talk about an individual just like this woman in the car, and escalating her terminology to that of a terrorist. There is the slippery slope, as they say, to using these terms. And so even though I am not a person who is fond of Antifa, I don't like their ideology, I don't like the tactics that they engage in, I don't like pretty much any of it, I still don't like the term terrorism being attributed to them, because it is something that the government is using in order as an opportunity to take a situation and usurp more power. Conversely speaking, Antifa wouldn't exist and wouldn't have anything to do with their idle hands if they didn't have something to focus on the government. Now, as an example, Alex, of things that I could have talked about today, but didn't, that ICE Watch group that this woman allegedly was participating with, or at least her partner was, okay, as the reports go. Do you know that ICE material was not the only thing that they promote inside of their action plans, that they want to hold protests against data centers and building out of data centers, because they are not a single purpose thing, that they are basically an omni-causal progressive liberal batshit thing where you start off with one goal, and if that goal no longer exists, you still want to exist as an unit. You have people now, you have resources, you have soldiers, so to speak. So that's that
like
type
the
of thing.
Government.
My point is
that's what they sound like to me. I hear you, man. Yes, of course. I don't I didn't say a single word, and nor would I, to defend whatever the fuck is going on in her.
I hope you know that wasn't my angle. My angle wasn't directed at you. It was
no. And I get it. I just want to clarify that. I'm very willing to make the absolute worst assumptions. Maybe her group was also campaigning for transing babies. That's terrible. They shouldn't do that. But
the government at no point is going to go, hey, guess what? We took care of all the threats. Everything's fine. And the protesters are not going to go, hey, the government is cooperating with us. We have nothing more to fight for. There is no existential threats that we're facing, right? So.
Yes, I mean that is a standard problem in organizational behavior that I've thought an inordinate amount about, and I don't really know what to do, because it's a cancer, right? It legitimately makes organizations behave like cancer, where they just grow and grow until something stops them, basically. Speaking of cancer, DOD. $1.5 trillion budget. What? They just got a 50% raise. As a reward
instead,
for not passing.
We got rid of all the NGOs. We got rid of all the NGOs so that we could just have one GO, the military.
No, but there was something else I was gonna say, but I don't know. Whatever. It's not coming to me. But look. I'm happy we were able to bring it to this point, because I think that's where, regardless of where we fall on the particular situation, that's in a way that's the bait, right? That's kind of like the thing that we were intended to sort of bicker about, and not whether the whole setup.
I think we avoided bickering. I think we successfully avoided bickering.
Yay. We, the general public.
Sure.
And
sure.
The more important part is whether we see the setup and the promotion of the setup as wanting to, people to sort of take aside, the Democrats versus the Republicans or whatever, and ignore the fact that these people agree on much more than they do. They disagree.
And I have a one final point. What my real fear is that let's say, once again, I like to use this word a lot, hypothetically speaking, let's say I'm an enemy combatant of the United States, and I see them tear themselves apart over a certain topic. I'm going to invest heavily and spend, a lot of resources to make that happen again. If I can get a cop to shoot somebody in the face and it can cause this much chaos, that's much cheaper than a 9/11 or whatever false flag, and that's what I'm worried about, is even if it wasn't a false flag event, the perceived enemies would see that and say, oh, wow, look how only for a few dollars or whatever, at low investment, I can bring down this city, or I can tear down their society. And that's what I'm afraid of, is that we don't have that ability to have that kind of discourse. You know, like
the fact of the matter is we are, and I confess I don't fully comprehend the repercussions of this, but in my defense, I don't think anybody does. We are in an info war, right? I think for me, the most emblematic image that came out of the Venezuela story was when everybody in like the Trump put out a photo, I think, out of the Situation Room or something, and people noticed that in the background was a full screen X.com window. Okay, like they were they were literally bombing places and checking out the responses on X. Like that should melt your brain. You know, to the fact to which the war itself consists of bombs and tweets. Right? Well, and controlling reactions and, you know, sort of, yeah.
Go back to the 9/11 days and the Iraq war. I mean, one of the things that has been different about this administration that a previous, let's say, warmongering administration, and I'm not using that term as strictly pejorative, it's just descriptive because people would know who would be counted in that. If we go back to a previous administration like that, they normally would get public support for the activity by trying to make sure that the activity was televised more across, you know, the 24-hour news, cable news channels in a way that made it entertaining for people, that made people get really excited about seeing their country go kick another country's ass, which in some ways, when necessary, can be good because you don't want your people necessarily to disapprove of the activity that you're taking part in if it's the right activity to be taking part in. You want support because support helps. But the entertainment factor, the fact that weapons are cool to some extent, right? Blowing shit up is cool. You might not remember this character, Alex, because you know this might have preceded your watching of these unfolding. But there was a character at the beginning of the Second Iraq War who was the sort of the PR guy for the Iraqis, and he got the nickname Baghdad Bob because he's like, oh nope, we're winning, we're defeating them, there's nothing going on, and meanwhile the United States, the people watching at home are laughing their asses off because they know that this is basically the Wizard of Oz with a man behind the curtain going like there's nothing to see here, and it's, you know, or the Naked Gun, Leslie Nielsen looking at standing in front of buildings exploding with fireworks all over the place, telling people to, you know, back up, there's nothing to see here. Like it was entertaining to people, that whole unfolding, and of course I can understand why. In a movie form, I'm entertained as hell, you know, but when my emotions are tangled up with also the question of whether or not what the cause is just, that's where things get conflicted. Those are two conflicting tensions. Now, I hopefully manage those appropriately, but that's something that Trump is not exactly doing, is my point. Where I
will say, no, of course, there's no limiting principle in the entertainment value of, you know, they're not saying like this should be like clarifying, informative, but not like, you know, war porn. There's no such limiting factor. But I will say that the amount of, you know, responses that are just odd, and I won't say they're bots because I'm not sure, and to some degree I don't care. But they are people who I've never heard from before who will show up out of nowhere, sometimes my followers, sometimes not, and just make like derogatory comments aimed at me specifically, trying to make me feel bad. And not like even arguing anything, you know, just, you know, I had a moron call me today. Okay. I previously had been called brown, but not, this is a new level.
I think I will actually have to bleep that on the podcast version of this, sir.
Great. Well, that's how
congratulations,
I said it.
Our first bleep.
Listening to the playback, I naturally can bleep my voice, which is what you just heard.
There's a show first. Well, you know, the passions and the tensions go high when people are you know, emotionally caught up in the activity. And there was Paul, your concerns are well placed in that there's a Christian anarchist philosopher named Jacques Ellul who wrote, maybe parts of it can be considered outdated, but it is incredibly advanced and sophisticated, and in many ways timeless. Two books, one involving advancement in technology and society, but the other is called Propaganda: Formation of Men's Attitudes. And in that, I think one of the most salient summaries of modern propaganda, which again, you can say some of it is outdated because it was written in the 60s, but it is still very apt and in some ways timeless. And that is, most people believe that propaganda is strictly to attempt to change people's opinions, which is not really that useful in short order. It's very difficult to change people's opinions overnight. But if you can tie in to the right symbology, the right sentiments, the right narrative plays, you can get people to act in short order. You can get people to, on a whim, change their desired course of action with just a little bit of push and pull if you pull the right levers. And so that, I believe, is one of the most timeless sort of observations, is that modern propaganda is really geared towards getting people to act. And so whether that action is small and is simply repeating vocal support of something, or it is to, quote, mobilize, as a lot of the progressive leftists do, and engage in that, the propaganda itself is to get people to act. So I think as a general sanity check, the moment that something comes through your field of view that gets you really emotional and really invested in the story that you're reading, that is when you need to take the most amount of pause and sort of introspect to determine whether or not this is the next things you feel compelled to do make sense, or are you being manipulated to become a pawn in someone else's chess game. Alex, do you have any anything to add to that tail end there?
No, I don't think so. I just really think that we will continue to track the story, and not the particular story. I mean, we might, but that's not what I'm talking about. Track the story of the fact that it's, everything is becoming a multidimensional info war, and I just don't really think any player has a good model. They're just I mean, they might, but they are pushing all the buttons in all directions, or so it seems. And I don't know where this ends, especially with AI in the mix.
Well, Paul Ramirez mentioned the term false flag, which is a great transition point to, I guess, the main subject for the remaining of the show here, Alex, because you actually do have a literal false flag story to introduce us into the next topic, because you complained to Elon about X literally putting a false flag as the flag for Iran this week.
That is correct. So apparently somebody talked to Nikita Beer, who is like this kind of like, I don't know, very, very online, somewhat respected, I guess, like growth hacker type that works now at X. I think that's, I don't know, I'm trying to be fair. I'm not trying to like belittle the guy. But somebody was like, hey, you should change the flag of Iran to the Shah's flag of Iran. And then the guy's like, okay, And
right now the flag involves sort of like an onion-like icon on it. And the old flag involved a lion as its central figure. And so they would be replacing it with the old flag.
Right. They put in the flag that implied, that the Shah is in control. And that happened. And you know what, like, it's fine in terms of like, of course, this is a US platform and the US, likes to wishcast a little bit and whatever. But it grates me particularly in the case of X, which is, it keeps telling everybody that, truth is the most important thing. And the truth will stop the AI from going insane and things like that, which, I believe. But, that's the thing with, accusing others, right, of like, oh, you don't know what a gender is and whatever, and just because you don't like it doesn't make it false or whatever. Well, okay, but like, let's be consistent here. The
the power that is in charge of Iran right now does not recognize that as its flag. There's nothing to tell us that the Shah is the more popular authority. Maybe people don't like the Ayatollahs. It doesn't mean that they like the Shah, by the way. And what is the point of doing this? Like, this is fucking the vandalism. It's not really anything else than just or maybe more gently wish casting. It's just.
Well, that was
but at least it tells you that there's an active propaganda operation that we can all now experience on our on our screen.
Well, that was leading us in. So last week, Alex, when I brought up Iran, I know that we had a little bit of contention, but I did mention that we had discussed this topic a couple months before, and I did pull up from the archives. We actually have archives now I can speak of, right? I pulled up from the archives our conversation then to sort of remind both you and I the thing we attempted to discuss it brief back in October. So this was October 12th, and I just have a couple minute clips here of you and I discussing things here. We have plenty of topics always on the cutting room floor, Alex, and someday we need to get back to what's going on in Iran. It's been a month and a half that things have been going on that I've been tracking, but we haven't really had an opportunity to talk about them.
We'll have to pay attention.
To summarize things that are currently on the cutting room floor in Iran, just so that you get an idea, over the last several months in the aftermath of the bombing we did to, quote, knock out their nuclear capabilities, there have been many economic problems in Iran. They have water crises. They have a lack of water. They have a lack of power. They are cracking down on Bitcoin, which is being used to try to compensate for their currency collapse. So they're having a myriad of problems. And in this last several weeks, there is an interesting sort of turn where the European Union is bringing back sanctions against Iran. And it appears that there is sort of disagreement internally in the upper parts of government as to what the correct approach is. And there are signs, not conclusive signs, but signs in their laws and their behavior on the ground that attitudes are shifting and that there are some sea changes possibly around. There's a headscarf law that is being relaxed, and there's increasing number of women who are not wearing the full headdress and going out into public, which used to be a verboten sort of thing, where there were laws against women going out in public without their coverings. Those are being relaxed in places.
As of when are you saying that this is happening?
Last couple months.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I think that's false. Okay. Well, whoever's feeding you this is misleading. I think the headscarf laws have been getting relaxed since before the quote unquote 14-day war. So yeah.
Oh, so you're asking me if there has been any relaxing prior to that too? Meaning that. Well, I mean, you're agreeing that there is a relaxing.
A delta, right? Even the water stuff or whatever.
I am not necessarily trying to have a specific causal chain. I am more trying to talk about the atmosphere as it currently stands in afterwards, not necessarily that they are all causally linked.
Yeah, the question is this a change in reality situation, whether or this is just what Iran is? Like, have they been cracking down on Bitcoin before?
So to clarify, I am not putting a causal tie between the attack and the headscarf thing. I am.
But even without the causal element, I'm just saying, like, is this new?
I will try to go to see when those were relaxed when we possibly cover it next week or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
But those are certain things that are occurring.
By the way, to clean up a little bit what we said before about Iran, I was sort of looking a little bit, and I attached a couple of posts to the space, and it appears we were both right in a way. So there is pre-invasion, pre-bombing era footage of Tehran with nary a headscarf in sight. Showing that it was like really kind of, I mean, I don't know if it was like a particular region or whatever, but like it's not the only footage as well. Like it was pretty clear that the headscarf was on the way out. But recently, they formally or semi-formally said, whatever, it's over. We're not going to enforce it.
So the story that I had was discussing how internally there is sort of there's arguments among who they're calling sort of like the hardliners, of course, the more religiously focused people. And it's a fascinating thing I want to talk about at some point. The reason I think it's important is because Iran being a large country with millions of people is not something easy to manage when you are, let's say, more authoritarian in nature. Now, of course, it's not completely authoritarian. It's not something that has no liberties or things like that. There are a lot of things that are illegal that still happen quite often because, like in many countries where let's say the social status is of a harsher treatment from the government, there are a lot of things that go by the wayside despite being strictly illegal on paper, right? They are too hard to keep order on, so things are sort of done.
You mean like
the
drugs
hush,
in the
hush,
US?
wink, wink. Drugs in the U.S. or just think speakeasies as a clear example during Prohibition, right? Yeah. Speakeasies are an example where it's like everyone knew they existed, and probably a lot of them were known, but only under certain conditions would they crack down. Or it's another modern similarity would be the way that we still have technically a federal law saying that marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug, but now we have dispensaries all over the place, and we just sort of pretend and pick and choose which laws we're going to enforce when, right?
Look,
so
I will tell you what I hear from the other side of the veil. Hey, pun not intended, but I embrace it.
Retroactively intended.
Yes, yeah. I will embrace it. I will own it. Which is that there was a surprising amount of support for the government that came up after the bombings, which is, of course, not really shocking when you know that this happens all the time. Hell, Democrats were supporting George Bush after 9/11, right? Like, it's just what happens when, a country gets attacked. Everybody
call it a
rallies around
patriotism bubble.
Yes. But even like young people who generally were not very favorably inclined towards the government sort of, started responding very positively to the, quote unquote, supreme leader there as a symbol of resistance or whatever. But I think what you might be seeing is an understanding by the regime. And that's like a really kind of live player stuff. It's a good sign for their sort of vitality, which is to say, like, look, we can keep focusing on bullshit right now, or we can, give the people who want to support us something that, they want, that we don't really ultimately care about, so that everybody can come together on the stuff that matters. That's my completely own reading.
It's not necessarily how I would summarize my angle or the things that I think are there. But
that's my reading. I'm not saying that this is what happened. I'm just giving you
it might be a component in the direction of what I'm interested in. And the reason I'm interested in this is, obviously if let's pretend that the government had, complete control and had the ability to enforce every single, hard law that they have, those social restrictions and things like that. You could imagine them hunkering down and doubling down on everything and being obstinate in the face of whatever is going on in the world. So the European Union's putting sanctions back on. But these types of signs give a possibility of what I might call a soft coup. Not that anyone's overthrowing the Ayatollah or anything, but that as a way of sort of keeping power as a figurehead and having the established power, allowing for certain different undercurrents to take way, similar in a way to what you're saying, except more close to the top, and allowing other decision makers to play a larger role and we'll call it moderate in certain ways in order to somewhat like China when it decided it was going to become pseudo capitalist, still maintain.
I will tell you something you might not know, which is that Pashinyan, the current prime minister, no, president, I don't know what he is. Yeah, president, but not the supreme leader, right? The president who's not like the It's a weird presidency, I guess.
Yeah.
The virtualized presidency lives inside a virtual machine. Anyway, he is considered one of the people that wanted to get along with the West and America and negotiate
That's
and whatever.
part of one of the stories that I have in the stack.
Right,
Yeah.
but when you get elected and then get bombed, that tends to put a dent in your agenda, which means that actually what seems to have happened is that he has gotten his agenda undermined rather than reinforced.
Right. Yeah.
Just FYI.
Yeah, that's actually part of the story. So you can see why those are things I eventually want to get to, because I am accumulating these sorts of stories as we go on.
Okay, I'm just I guess to put my cards on the table, I know that there is a ridiculous, and I mean absolutely insane amount of propaganda specifically about Iran. I believe Netanyahu's latest talking point is that they've got missiles and they can go 8,000 miles, and if you add another 3,000 miles, they could hit Mar-a-Lago. He said Mar-a-Lago, right? For no reason.
Well,
apparently, he just came out.
He has an audience, right? Who might be very concerned with that capability.
But you can see what he's doing. I guess he's not subtle. Anyway, long story short, there is a lot of propaganda around Iran, and some of it is a little bit more subtle than this. Let's just say. I don't know how to say this without sort of creating an air of like epistemic helplessness, right? But like I would definitely be double cautious about. For example, you're like, okay, they're putting back sanctions, yes, but Russia and China both have come out and said we don't agree with the sanctions, right? Because the sanctions are supposed to be bringing back UN Security Council sanctions, right? Which China and Russia had originally voted for. But now they've said, yes, okay, whatever. Since the U.S. left that deal, years ago, and the reason you're snapping them back does not make any sense for us, we're going to ignore that, right? So, in fact, Iran used to be a lot more isolated at the time when Russia and China were voting against Iran, to now where immediately they didn't even have a process or something. They're like, yeah, fuck it, whatever, we don't care. So make of that what you will.
Well, of course, in this quick, here is what we would have been talking about. We didn't get to talk about all sorts of things and talk nuance. So don't confuse anything I might have said. I wanted to bring up as everything is rosy.
I'm saying this as a broad caution, not that what you said specifically.
Yeah.
Well, when
so last week, Alex, this is now live me. Last week you said you didn't remember that conversation. I thought that would be good to just recap, because this was October 12th, and I was the things that I had on my stack are primarily relevant to a lot of what's happening this week in Iran. Last week you seemed to be hesitant to accept some of the economic trouble that I had been talking about, but I think this week you're more accepting to that, the things I was commenting on being a possible ground reality. Is that a accurate statement?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, I had talked about their inflation. I had talked about the
issues. You said there was 40% inflation, which to the degree that it's an official measure, I don't have any reason to question. But then you said, they're cutting 3 zeros from their currency, which clearly cannot be a result of the 40% inflation. So it's, I wasn't reacting so much to the hard data to the degree that it can be confirmed, than to the composition and vibe that gave off.
Okay. Well, I have
but
some.
You see what I mean, right? Like saying, they cut 3 zeros from their currency, right? That is, what is it? 10,000% reduction in the meaning. Okay, well, that clearly reflects a very long-term pattern of inflation that they are, what to call it, putting under the rug, so to speak, psychologically, right?
Sure.
It can't be the 40% that did that. So it more tells you that the 40% is more normal than it sounds than otherwise. But whatever article you were reading that triggered me clearly did not make that point.
Okay. Well, not to beat a dead horse then, but in response to the objections, I did try to gather non-diaspora resources, and I tried to go to the Iranian state government directly to try to see what they were saying about economic conditions. And I can tell you that as of the last couple days, the official Iranian newspaper outlets are inaccessible from my home. It seems to be that the entire .ir top level domain is inaccessible. The DNS servers that would route me to their services are down, inaccessible. I've tried to go through Tor. I've tried to, narrow it down that it wasn't necessarily the U.S. government blocking me from accessing these things, and that it was more likely the Iranian government blocking the world from getting to them. But the Wayback Machine had articles cached from the 3rd. And so I pulled several articles from the IRIB news outlet, the official state-sanctioned media. And we have a article on the consumer price index for they have a different calendar than we do. So this is the ASAR 1404. So this is last year. 2025 is their year, 1404. And in ASAR 1404, the annual inflation rate for the country's household reached 42.2%, which is 1.8 percentage points higher than the same statistic in the previous month. Consumer price index in ASAR 1404, and I really like this because there was something in the article they failed to remove, which was, Shah Ali, dear, please put an image inside the news item and make the mid-title red, thanks, in the middle of the content. I like that.
Maybe it's a message to the Shah. You don't know.
According to IRIB news agency, the annual inflation rate for Iranian households is as follows. In ASAR 1404, the consumer price index for the country's household reached 435.1, which represents a 4.2% increase compared to the previous month, a 52.6% increase compared to the same month for the previous year, and a 42.2% increase over the 12 months ending in the current month compared to the same period of the previous year. Now, I need to be clear, I did take the Persian that was on the site and ask ChatGPT to give me a faithful translation and compared it to Chrome's translation just to try to make sure that I didn't miss too much, but the numbers should be straightforward. So at a bare minimum, I think we've confirmed that there's a significant inflation problem. The next one I found to be very, very cute, Alex. This is very, very adorable. So I mentioned that there were water problems. Water crises, droughts, significant droughts. And this is a very, very tiny article. Residents of Sharafabad area in Yasuj complain about water outages. According to the citizen reporter of the IRIB news agency, repeated drinking water outages are exhausting and unpleasant and disrupt the normal lives of citizens. For some time now, residents of the Sharafabad area of Yasuj have been facing frequent water cuts in the area. Now, this touches my heart because they only gave this citizen reporter one tiny sentence, 2 sentences, one tiny paragraph. With greetings and respect, please follow up on the situation regarding water outages in the Sharafabad area. We may not have water for 7 or 8 hours a day, and when it does come back, things that look like grass and greens come out of the pipes. And this warms my heart because they gave this guy just a very little minor segment in the newspaper to talk about the water problems in that area. So it's like very, very cute in my estimation. It makes me feel like I'm playing The Sims and I'm watching their social media inside of the Sims environment where the citizens are just tweeting out their complaints. So I think there is at least some reality to the general problems that I was tracking back in October that I was reading through non-direct Iranian sources, the auxiliary diaspora outlets talking about those issues. And that comes important simply because I was reading about those and trying to bring them up into the show. And now supposedly these conditions are were what spawned, were the catalyst for the protests that have been being discussed in the last week or so. Now, Alex, with that regard, with the supposed catalyst for the events, have you heard any different stories as to what caused the initial protests / riots?
Again, I will repeat what I think I've been trying to say. I accept all blame that I'm not being clear. But I think I said these words exactly right before, which is that I'm not questioning that like the inflation was what it was. It's the synthesis, the vibe, the selection, and the implications that come through in a propaganda account. Let me give you an example, right? What if somebody takes the George Floyd protests and says, there's an internal coup in the United States and we should assist by, I don't know, bombing them or something. Like, you can do that. It's not actually hard. If you wanted to take today's news from the United States and put together a story where people have problems all over the place, there's economic issues happening, and this is an indictment of the country's leadership, and take it wherever you want. Like that it is. You are a sufficiently creative and intelligent person that this is like literally does not pose a problem for you to do. So this is the majority of my concern is like, is that what we are being fed? It's not that did the things actually themselves specifics happen, but I mean, I questioned some particulars that I wanted to dig into and didn't. Like, did the authorities say that they wanted to evacuate Tehran? That would be something. But other than that, the main sort of fact I don't generally question. It's the synthesis and also the direction, right? So okay, it's 40% this year. What was it last year? To what degree is this important? To what degree is it normal?
So I think the issue comes down with sometimes you're responding to me as if I'm a proxy for the things that you read elsewhere, and that sort of creates a conflict where I haven't yet even, not that I would, but that I haven't advocated or ran conclusions in line with what you are presumably responding to that you see out there.
I don't read elsewhere. I just see a wave of propaganda that is, I kind of know what a color revolution looks like, right? And I see a wave of propaganda that looks like it, and I get very suspicious. And that's what I'm responding to. So, and I mean, you do make a selection of the material you choose to read. I mean, and again, I'm not blaming you for it. I'm just giving you my reaction. It's, I'm not saying like you should or should not.
Right. But so when I've been bringing up, so back in October and then last week when I was bringing up these particular economic concerns, I was expressing that I'm paying attention to these things because economic strife, economic pressure creates tension, and that pressure and tension needs to be released somehow. And that back in October, I was talking about, as I played back in the clip, something that could be considered a soft coup, where the response to the pressure, the response to that could be a relaxing of certain rules and conditions from the government in order to try to reduce.
Not a coup, this is called democracy, right? These guys do actually vote on stuff. I don't know, like soft coup is a it's quite hard language for like, they changed the law on something that people weren't unhappy about or something.
But I didn't say it occurred. I said it could be something that might that could be down the line if we pay attention to the way that things unfold. I didn't say it was going to happen. I said this is the types of things I would be looking for as responses to the types of pressure.
You could describe many things that happen in the U.S. as soft coups, and I think from inside the U.S. people would object to that kind of framing.
Okay.
Like, Trump, let me give you a picture, right? Trump goes to Saudi Arabia and says, this is the end of the neocons. Well, blah, 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 blah. Then things happen. Epstein comes up, let's say, for example, right? And then all of a sudden, Trump wants to bomb the entire planet. Okay. That could be, I could say like, well, that's a soft coup by the neocons, right? Is that a fair way to put it? I don't like it. It sounds a little bit spiked. I don't know. The president's still there. I blame him for it. I don't think he was forced to do the stupid shit he's doing. Yeah.
Okay. So because this is similar to like a a dead end that we sort of had last week. I want to try to get past.
Did you, by the way, did you watch the thing I sent you earlier today?
Yeah. And he said a lot of the same things that I the same things that I said, but actually provided fewer sources for what he was talking about. He was just summarizing. So the fact that you accepted what he says, just spewing, where I'm just trying to talk about
anything. I'm trying to give you a different framing of the same facts.
I don't know if he had a significantly different frame.
Okay.
Like that's where I'm sort of getting lost. It seems like you in this case that you are giving a life to the things I'm talking about before I even actually get to give an opinion that is controversial to them, and that, like, I didn't say we need to go in and bomb them. Like, I don't know what.
Do you think it would be preferable, or like that?
No,
that they are.
I wouldn't. I was against the first one, and I would be against another mission in there.
Would you be shocked if I tell you that things are moving that way?
No, I wouldn't be shocked.
And by things, I mean ships with bombs.
No, I wouldn't be.
Like physically moving that way.
I wouldn't be. No.
Yeah. Well, but I guess what I'm saying is that, the news and the boats are moving in tandem. And that's the same theme I was bringing up before, that this is not a war, it's an info war. And again,
I was talking about these items. I was talking about these items before those actions were occurring, right? So I was talking about these items back in October, and I was talking about these items back in October because I was attempting to my limited capabilities try to read the news that came out to try to paint a coherent picture of what might be happening internally to the best of my understanding in advance, so that I'm not doing it retroactively as something like this week unfolds. Right? I was attempting.
How does it relate? I guess. Like, what does it? Does it make it like more likely or less likely? Do you actually think that Trump has like a passion for protecting the protesters of Iran?
I don't know how that comes in. Out of everything I've said so far, I don't know how that question comes to me, because I've made no normative statements about caring about people.
No, but you're saying, I wanted to understand the internal state of Iran before any kind of bombing happens, right? Any kind of a renewed attack. So I'm saying, how do the two correlate? That's what I'm asking. Do the internal? If I talk
about economic, let's rewind real quick to try to talk about difficulty that I'm even having in discussing this topic so far. If I bring up that they're having economic problems, you ask a good question. Hey, what is the delta? What is the trajectory? What is the first derivative of these changes? Is it something where that this is just the normal, and the reporting that you're reading is treating it as if it's something new? And that question winds up becoming almost an objection to me even attempting to talk about it. And so instead of a question that we say, hey, that's actually good, let's go look at it, then we come back and we say, okay, well, we looked at it. Actually, this has been the conditions for a very long time. That might change the way we want to think about the current state. Instead of that, it's, I need to know that immediately this second, or else it means that now we're supporting an invasion. Like, I don't understand how we get from A to B, where I'm just trying to talk about possible tensions inside of the country. Okay.
I may be being unfair. Okay, let me grant you something and ask a question in a way that maybe helps us get somewhere. We are not talking about the internal issues in Pakistan right now, right?
Right.
We're not talking about the internal issues in Bangladesh or Suriname or, Djibouti, name any. We're talking specifically about Iran. So I guess the question is why?
Well, for me personally, when we blew up the nuclear facilities in Iran, you and I, you may not remember, and unfortunately this particular episode I don't have recorded to pull up the clips from, but I expressed concern that this story wasn't over, I believe you echoed a similar statement. That this story wasn't over. I said people are celebrating the fact that there is, laughing at people who said that the attack. Oh, look, you said that there would be a war, that this would be bad, that this whole thing, would destabilize the region, et cetera, et cetera. But it didn't happen within like the first couple days after the attack. And I said that's a premature sort of celebration. Of course, I don't want things to escalate, but I said here's what could happen. I said we've now made an attack. The government doesn't know who inside is an asset for adversaries. The government doesn't know who to trust. The citizens might find that this is an opportunity to shore up rebellious causes and build pressure on the low end going upward, because not necessarily successful revolutionary pressures, but revolutionary pressures, things that cause disruption, things that where opportunists take opportunity to go and attack the government. That gives the U.S. and Israel and other parties an incentive to sponsor those groups, and those groups may not be the greatest of characters. And then we might find ourselves several months later in a situation where now we are going to finish the job, and we are supporting bad actors in order to topple the main bad guy that we have in our focus. And we might wind up funding, groups who morally do not reflect what we might ideally want to do, all because we're trying to put an end on this story of the Ayatollah being in charge. Roughly speaking, that's where I started right immediately after the attack. Then I was continuing to watch news out of Iran, and I was looking at the economic reports coming out saying that there were these economic problems, regardless of whether it is a continuation of previous trends or if it is a new situation that they found themselves in. Because there was additional talk about sanctions being in, the citizens have the ability to blame the government for certain behaviors towards the international community, and sanctions exacerbate economic problems. If people don't have water, if the grocery prices are going up, if the currency is suffering from massive inflation, it does change things if the inflation is predicted. So if it is par for the course, you can mathematically bake in the inflation. So that does change things. But looking at large inflation, looking at unemployment numbers claiming to go up, that creates restlessness and extra pressure for the citizens towards the government that is controlling them. And that's where I was talking about the moderation, watching the moderation, looking at the news to see if the government was responding by replacing the Ayatollah, who might be and some of the hardliners, leaving them as figureheads, but as far as the internal policies go, being decided by a different, more moderate group. Those are the trajectories I was attempting to talk about. And it all comes from the fact that I didn't think the story was over. So now the fact that we have these riots, and of course we're attempting to fan the flames, and of course we're controlling the levers and things on the ground, and of course we're attempting to get public support to say that it's about liberation and all these things. Of course, I'm not focused on those things because I've just been attempting to try to watch those dominoes stack up to see if I could anticipate anything about what might happen.
Gator, sorry, can I just read you? I just did a basic, I realize this might not be productive, but I think it is actually interesting. I just looked at the historical inflation rate in Iran, okay? In the year 2019, it was 39.91. In the year 2020, it was 30.59. In the year 2021, it was 43.39. Mm-hmm. The year 2022, it was 43.39. In the year 2023, it was 44.58. I did not expect it to be this, but it is insane to me that apparently there's no change in the inflation rate.
Now,
all the stories that keep talking about a 40% inflation rate should have been saying ever since 2019, and they are not.
Sure. Okay. But now, remove for a moment the concern about how other people are currently running with those stories, and just focus between you and I on how we can possibly think to discuss what that might
I guess
mean.
To respond to the thing you actually said, if there wasn't a bottom up revolution wave, but Israel and the U.S. wanted to foment issues, do you think they would not be able to foment, not foment? Different kind of process.
With who?
You were saying I'm looking at the sort of social indicators in order to see if there will be the kind of social movements that maybe external actors can fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could also be that there are external funders that are creating said movements and they don't need to find anything, and the economic factors don't have to matter. Because they'll find whatever. No society is peaceful and perfect and utopian, and God forbid Iran definitely is not one of them anyway. Even if there's some were, Iran wouldn't be in that group. So of course there's issues, and they're going to find something. So anyway.
Can I add 2 cents in here?
Please.
Okay, and so 2019, you're talking about that inflation. So their gas prices in 2019 were huge too. So when I was out there in northern Iraq at that point on the ground during the 2019. So I know a lot of you guys don't know, but there was massive protests in Iraq at that point in Baghdad, and there were similar sized protests in Iran around that time in 2019.
The Green Revolution with Mousavi or something else?
It was more economic, like you guys are talking about.
Okay.
I don't know if there was a particular ideology involved in it. They were just completely dissatisfied with everybody over there. Now, granted, this is the word I was getting from my contacts who were going back and forth across the border, and my other contacts who talked to people across the border, like liquor store owners, I have a very wide contact. Used to have a very wide contact network out there. But so there was a lot of unrest with the government. And what happens is you start getting that economic unrest. And then like you're talking about, other things that might be cultural start coming in too, because they start going, well, I also hate this, so fuck you. I hate this headscarf. Or they're like, F you. I want to be able to drink. Right. So the bottom of it, though, was there was an economic issue, and it was coming to a head. The Soleimani assassination happened, which you could say whatever you want for Iran. It was a net, how do I put this? I know this personally. It was good for Iraq. It saved a lot of Iraqi lives, and it really did in a direct way. And but as far as Iran immediately, the people rallied around the flag after that. That's a single strike on a guy right outside of Bayam, that hit nothing else. I have no idea why he took that road out of that airport. That was the dumbest shoot me here thing I've ever seen. But so they back to that, they rallied around the flag temporarily. Now it was starting to fracture again, and then COVID hit, and they were able to lock down. So I can't tell you what the internal fracturing was after 2019, but yeah, there was a very similar thing going on in 2019 in the lead up to COVID, and it was all economic.
Yep. I believe, look, Iranians are, I don't know, I have a lot of admiration for the Iranian people. They're very educated and industrious and whatever. So I'm pretty sure they would want they would see issues in how their society is run and be pretty active in trying to counteract them. And to the degree that they can't, because there's only a limited amount of maneuvering space for the government or whatever. Maybe they're corrupt. I'm not here to defend them. I'm sure there's going to be social tension. I'm just saying, there's a history of protests there, but there's also a history of protests here and in Greece and in every other place I know.
I don't think that we would be taking the approach of, hey, there are similarly describable activities that we could see all over, therefore there is nothing to discuss and nothing to possibly ever come from.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep going as you are. I won't. I'll try not to sort of throw a wrench in your works.
Well, just for a second though, I would say the difference is last time there was a worldwide pandemic that they were using an excuse to lock down and scare people with. there's no backstop on that this time.
Anyway, let's see, I guess.
Well,
so wait, Donald Trump, are you saying that not the actual, whatever, the account? Are you saying that you're thinking that this protest movement will organically continue to sort of be a real issue for the government?
Oh no, I'm saying that so the government last time had a hard stop condition they could utilize to kind of lock down everything and then kind of pawn off the economic issues and everything else, saying, hey man, world's in a lockdown. This is why logistical problems are happening. This is why we're having support issues. This is why we're having this. They don't have that excuse this time, unless the U.S. decides to bomb the hell out of the place or do something stupid. And if we just shut up, this might play out in a way that works out. But
I see. Well, that's interesting because again, this Doomberg character I've been following made a similar prediction, and it only matters because it's a prediction. Because as a post-diction, it's just a ridiculous opinion. But he said that Carney would be brought in and assisted by Trump to come in to Canada. This is before he was even on the scene, because only Nixon can go to China and only Carney can open up the pipelines from Canada to the U.S. for oil. And so that Trump would sabotage effectively Poilievre because, if the conservatives took over, there was no way they could actually push back against the institutional inertia in Canada and actually increase production of oil. And then it happened. Okay, so it's another situation where apparently, and again, this is an insane story. If I was saying it after the fact, it would be worthless. The only reason it's worth something is because somebody actually predicted it in detail before it happened. Where the sort of U.S. is using its power not to to affect elections in a way that you might not think. I guess, like against the conservative, Trump is making statements about annexing Canada, which of course help the people who are against Trump, aka the liberals, aka Carney.
Ooh, that's a 5D chess there.
I know, and you wouldn't think it. You wouldn't think he's able of it, but apparently.
Paul Ramirez, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I have two things to say. When I hear the word soft power, I think color revolution of sorts, where you try to undermine the authority of the hosting country. And then second thing is, when it comes to Iran, I can't help but think about like Richard Pearl in the 90s, with the clean break strategy, when they wanted to tackle down 7 countries in the Middle East. And that's when they drew up the blueprints. And I'm basing I'm basing what I'm saying based on Scott Horton and a few others. But according to them, like in the 90s, they had a clean break strategy where they want to have Israel instead of have a 2-state solution, they'll just instead subjugate the entire Middle East and dominate, through, first take, and this is something Wesley Clark, a 4-star general, in 2007 on Democracy Now! Was saying about how we're just gonna he reinforced this. The leader of the leader of NATO. Okay, I guess that's all I had to really say. But to me, the whole thing with Iran is like the final country. They had 7 countries they want to topple. They already toppled Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran, or not Iran, Somalia. Or I think
yes,
I might mess up.
Yemen, a few others, and yeah, they've all been interestingly affected. Lebanon, I think, was on the list too. Anyway, sorry, Gator, go ahead.
Well, I don't think I have much I can really continue on today. I guess I'll end with a question from you, Alex, about your understanding of what is happening with the internet over there, because you posted quickly that IPv4 connections were still sort of ongoing. I have information since then that IPv4 was cut out for approximately a day after the screenshot that you took. And IPv4 is still limited. IPv6 is non-existent, and that would significantly, just IPv6 itself would significantly degrade their ability to get external communication. I have some stories that also they're doing things to attempt to block Starlink. So since I will just ask you, what do you believe is happening with the internet and its possible effects in Iran?
Yes. At the time that I reacted to reports that were sort of clearly exaggerating the situation because they were sharing false facts. I think after that time, in fact, the internet was cut pretty sort of completely. And that was part of their sort of counter protest strategy that they implemented. Yeah. Again, like, I made a very targeted pushback on a piece of propaganda that was clearly false. The fact that it became true later, I don't know what it proved. That they had advanced knowledge, or
if IPv6 was cut out the time that you had objected, IPv6 cutting out still would have degraded.
I did agree it was cut out.
Well, I'm saying that still would significantly degrade the ability of the country to have normal international internet connectivity.
In that case, we found the first country that's reliant on IPv6, and congratulations on the Iranians of being ahead of.
Not reliant, but if you have IPv4 for your entire country, that means all of your CDN servers, everything that might be doing video streaming, has to rely on network address translation and port exhaustion plus IP exhaustion. So I mean, you're talking about degrading the network capabilities to a significant degree, even if the IPv6 traffic only accommodated for a certain portion of the traffic. So I mean,
in no situation did I say they have not cut the IPv6 traffic. In fact, I said they have cut the IPv6 traffic, but only the IPv6 traffic. So people who are saying they've cut all traffic are wrong. That's what I said.
Would that still not significantly degrade?
I showed a chart. In fact, I showed a chart that showed that IPv6 was 13% of the traffic, IPv4 was 87% of the traffic, and then had a cutoff point at which it became 100% IPv4 traffic, adding evidence to the fact that IPv6 was cut, which I supported.
I'm asking you, wouldn't that itself, the IPv6 traffic, even without, have significantly degraded the ability of
clearly, IPv6 traffic doesn't go down by itself. Somebody's doing something to the internet for a reason, right? I wasn't disputing that at all. In fact, I was adding evidence to that pile. I was just trying to make more accurate the meme that was going around.
Well, can we expand on perhaps then the implications? Because I think that's really, you had lamented last week that we might not be adding value to the conversation, and I think we can add value to aspects like that, where we talk about, okay, so they cut out IPv6, that leaves IPv4. What does that mean that the Iranian population is capable of in that scenario? And I just did prattle off some complications that cutting off IPv6 creates, which is that you now have port exhaustion capabilities because everything has to go through network address translation in order to
be clear, I think IPv4 was itself compromised significantly after that.
It was, yeah. According to Cloudflare, it was out for like 24 hours, yeah. But I'm saying...
So they cut the internet, because they clearly, for whatever reason, thought that was part of the protest movement, either inwards or outwards or whatever it was that they were concerned about. That's what they did, and I'm sure they killed a lot of people.
And I still so now here's a question. If you try to do any name resolution on .ir websites, so like for example the IRIB news pages, you can't contact their Whois servers. Their Whois servers are down, unreachable. And you can't get any resolution.
You would say they have become who isn't?
My question would be, What would that be simply because they have no way, they don't have a structure that keeps those things up when they go to lockdown, or would they be deliberately turning those services off for alternate reasons?
Okay. This is me speculating wildly and basing off of what Mercouris said in the video that I shared with you. So for everybody else, by the way, sorry, I forgot to actually say what that was when I sent to Gator. So I didn't send a secret. I told him to look at the latest video by Alexander Mercouris on YouTube, because the 25 first minutes of that video were specifically about Iran and gave what I thought was a fairly balanced view of the situation, which again I don't endorse because he has his own biases, but at least it was a synthesis that, I don't know, gave a little bit to both sides and maybe had something to add. But what he said is that, to him, and again it's speculation, it sounds plausible to me, but I'm just repeating it as such, as speculation, that what happened is that the Iranians accepted assistance from the Chinese, who you can imagine in a rush brought in their some Chinese firewall components, and you can expect that they have not been fine-tuned to operate 100% precisely, which means that they probably had a stronger hammer than they strictly required. That's plausible to me.
For the next upcoming episodes, if we bring up Iran again, would it be possible to put aside the idea that we are forwarding propaganda talking points and instead approach a question of, if these details are true, what they might imply, what in the world of propaganda, what leverage do they give the players who might want to exploit those aspects? What narratives would they might want to use and run with? Like that I think would be helpful to facilitate a conversation.
Did you read my thread on the reasons for war with Venezuela?
Where you gave so many reasons that it seemed like not going to war was insane.
Yeah, well, it's not that. It's that, like, if you have like 30 reasons, like, you don't have reasons, right? You just like,
or you have so many that it
I don't like
it only makes sense.
Borders. It looks like a vaguely phallic. Like, I don't know.
we were not given a consistent thread line, right? Absolutely, but they also didn't. They also didn't ask us for our support. They just kind of went and did it.
Well, I to help them, I did come up with, I did synthesize everything too. Maduro is a dealer who deals in oil, and he was not giving them their hit, and they were really cranky about it, so they went and bombed him.
He was a dealer who was dealing deals, and we had to deal with him.
Well, life's a deal, as they say, the art of it. So yeah, that was my synthesis of everything. How to bring together drugs and oil. I don't know, something about addiction. But that the reason I'm bringing that up is that if they want to do a thing, they're gonna find a reason. And it doesn't even have to make sense. It doesn't even have to be relevant. It doesn't even have to be something that people care about. All of a sudden, they will start caring about it. Like crossing state lines. He crossed state lines. Do you understand what that means? Mm-hmm. No, and neither do you. Actually, that's I don't know, like, I really feel bad for, like, I feel like I'm cramping your style, but I also feel that what I'm trying to say is not coming across, and I accept full responsibility for that.
Well, look, maybe I'm wrong. It feels like you are targeting the frustration that you see from you are understandably reactive to the constant push and pull that the propaganda makes to get people to support particular causes. And you are watching people that you possibly once respected their opinion on topic X have some incompatible explanation for why they now support an opposite sort of stance on topic Y, and that is extremely frustrating. Because you can, from your perspective, you can see that if they were just to, hold on to the principles that they're in their minds that they were claiming in one space, and see that the principles should apply in this place where they're ignoring them, that they wouldn't be saying what they're saying, and that after COVID, where the whole world was succumbed to these onslaughts of slogans and emotional manipulations, that watching that come into play when bombings occur and when many lives are possibly threatened and endangered is really concerning. And I think, unfortunately, I am receiving a lot of that as sort of a rejection of talking about the topic, because you're not consciously, but emotionally afraid of feeding in to the propaganda if we talk about the narratives and not mention that it's propaganda, that it can be propaganda served to justify U.S. action into the state. So if we start saying, look at all these problems in Iran, look at all the ways that the people are suffering, by implication, that means that we should do something.
I mean, the articles themselves that you read definitely have that subtext. Again, like, just by their very existence, right? Like the fact that they exist about Iran and not about Pakistan. The fact that they exist about Iran.
Well, Iran International has a reason for that, but.
Well, no, I'm talking about the BBC coverage you were reading specifically, right? So, to me, I guess, look, consuming a source without the requisite, and this is why they're covering it this way, is incomplete, very incomplete. But if you tell me, look, the U.S. propaganda is this, and the underlying truth of that propaganda, because propaganda does not have to be false, is this. That is a complete package of information I can process. But without that first part, I'm like, all right, what am I hearing here? Are you saying this is true? Are you saying this is, what's, yeah. For example, right, you do agree that knowing that, inflation has been in the 40s since 2019 completely changes the valence of that data point, that it's 40% this year too.
In possibly supporting ways, meaning if you have 5 years of rampant inflation with no relief, that could absolutely be more exacerbating than a single year.
Right. But it's not like
it's certainly important. I agree with you. 100%. I agree it's important. I think where I disagree in the current moment is that the way that observation is delivered is more stopping discussion than enhancing discussion.
Which is why I
hey,
sent you material today in order to help sort of move it forward rather than retard it, which I might be making it retarded. I don't know. I fully take responsibility.
Well, I guess we'll wrap up today. We'll just, if we do talk about Iran, I can ask, cut me some slack, because I'm not attempting to advocate for military intervention.
Okay.
I'm just trying to understand what tensions might exist, what levers people may attempt to pull, things like that. And yes, if we talk about all the economic things going on, and all of a sudden, Trump says that he attacked them because of something completely out of left field, that nothing we were discussing was even involved, then oops. But that at least is part of what we've done consciously.
It went from they can't have a nuclear weapon to they can't enrich to 60%, to they can't have long-range missiles, to they have to let the IAEA back in, even though they probably helped with the strikes, to they have to be nice with their protesters. Right now, this is you are here.
And clearly, I would make obvious that that is an opportunistic statement, that we are, but that is also opportunistic in the sense that there may very well be a strong enough undercurrent of real activity that we would be pushing towards, pushing into, as towards the goal of regime change, if from Trump's perspective, because I don't know what's in his head, if regime change is his actual specific goal.
I don't know that he's, the only actor that matters in the situation. I will just say, there is a ridiculous amount of post-dated, like, you know, like stuff that happened earlier or in different places or both, that is being portrayed as if it happened, you know, yesterday in Iran. For example, I think there was a lot of play of that woman
even from the Germany thing. Some of the video of them sabotaging the power plants was said to be Iran.
Oh, sure. Well, that's interesting. Actually, I hadn't heard that. But what a lot of people may have seen the woman lighting on fire the photo of the Ayatollah and like lighting up.
Right. That was from Canada back like in 2022.
Yeah, exactly. But it, like, man, like, you know what? We might not agree on like a lot of it, but like, gee, fuck these people. Like these accounts, like large accounts with large followings who have garnered trust for a long time, just broadcasting this shit and like leaving it up after it's obvious that it is slop.
Yeah, and
what
you know I don't participate. You know I don't participate.
I'm not saying you know, I'm not saying you're Gator. Like, look, I'm angry at a lot of people. Every time I'm angry at a person, that's not me. I'm angry at you. Okay.
The entire world revolves around me as the resident narcissist right here. Everything affects me.
That's fair enough. Sorry, are you just to share a joke if it lands? But like, are you watching Pluribus?
Yes.
By any chance?
Yes.
So I do tend to be like grumpy, I guess. Like, I don't know, on my day to day, I'm not like a happy go lucky kind of person. So I'm like, oh, you know, am I like Carol? You know, like the woman who's like pissed off at the world or whatever. And she's like, no, you're more like the other guy. But sorry, I said this to my wife, and she responded, "You're more like what's his name, Manusos, who is even more dour." That's possible.
He adds a level to it. I mean, yeah,
that's my situation in my house. So if you want to get the vibe of my
all right, well,
stable state.
Look, so some choppy show, you know, discussion notwithstanding, you know, everything's fine. I want to try to extract what we can, and if you feel that the pieces of information I'm bringing are incomplete, I do value that observation. Like, hey, yeah, you know, it would matter if this was multi-year. Let's look at it. Okay, it is multi-year. How does that change possibly what the citizens are saying? Because if predicted inflation can be managed by people in finance, where you're baking into your calculations an inflationary value, and you're making decisions about your investments and things like that based off of a stated rate of inflation. But what it doesn't do is guarantee that wages are going to increase at the correct rate. It doesn't guarantee that things are going to be systemically able to be allocated the ways that they were before, that those inflationary effects will be uniformly distributed amongst things that people would buy in a coherent way, that without ripple effects that make certain things more abundant than others and other things have a dearth. And then you add on top of it, let's just say, which I don't know, but maybe this water situation is somewhat of a newer event. And therefore there haven't been solutions yet in place for the droughts.
What I heard about the water situation, in case it helps, and again, it could be swap. I normally wouldn't bring it up. I'm only bringing it up because it, as a counterbalance to other sort of speculative, is that again, I don't question that it's real. The what I heard, and it might actually be congruent with what you have in mind, is that the sanctions from the EU might have affected agricultural products, and Iran, in its push to become more self-sufficient in agriculture, has redirected water supplies from civilians to agriculture, leading to water shortages. That's one thing I did hear, which sort of brings it all together.
I think if we can just get to start talking about the stories without necessarily worrying about if we're reinforcing propaganda, I think we can actually come to a decent set of discussions like that, because that piece of information, if I can look into that to see if I can find out more about that, to see if that exists, that might be informative. Maybe it isn't, but we would also at least be then following the story to get our bearings, so that we don't feel like we're.
I hear you. The one thing that I will. I guess I'm attempting to make the same point, and if it doesn't come across, doesn't come across. But like, do you think that if those things weren't, like, we don't legitimately think that Trump is upset about the protests, right?
we think that this is a pretext for.
I do not find Trump to have the same type of emotional connection to stories that I would, to the point where the version of him caring is the same that I might have. I would say that as a concept, he cares in the sense that the world's narrative is that Iran has is on the extreme end of oppression of its citizens, and that if he were to take action at a moment where the narrative was that they were being horrifically oppressed, he would look like a great person in his mind. Right. Like he would have done a great thing.
Okay. But the thing is that he would, if this was not the case, that there were protests about X or Y, and certain actors wanted to attack, they would still attack. Venezuela did not. I do
not believe that in a vacuum. I do not believe that in a vacuum. I do believe they would look for opportunities and that they would try to create opportunities. But I don't believe that they would have exactly zero trajectory to where we wouldn't be at least able to follow the threads as the threads were being.
Okay. Actually, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I think it's worth adding to the news cycle, and because it's actually a very good example of what I'm talking about. Remember, I told you last week that the Cartel de los Soles did not actually exist, and it was to the degree that it did exist,
shorthand amalgamation of just general activity. Yeah.
Yes. Well, when it came down to the U.S. government defending the existence of that cartel in courts, after they arrested him, they brought him to the Southern District of New York. They hastily rewrote the indictment to remove most mention of Cartel de los Soles, and in fact, added a piece which said, this is just a general term that refers to broad activity of government corruption.
Yeah.
Right. So they literally made up a cartel. They designated it a terrorist organization to activate all the laws that we're talking about. Right. On the basis of that, and then snatch the guy. And then just kidding. It's not really a thing. Like that's the degree to pretext construction can go.
I wouldn't respond to that piece of information going, well, I bet Maduro has done always been honest with the things that he would claim or people were doing. Like I wouldn't respond to that piece of information with a symmetry sort of claim. I would just accept, okay, they're playing games. Right, they're playing games where they're convincing the public to support XYZ by feeding a set of quote facts to the public, changing them as they don't have the force of law that they wanted to support the actual justification for things when push comes to shove.
It's, as one must. You just cycle through until you find something that works. Come on.
Well, I mean, that is a very long and hard fought process for everyone in government. Someone's requesting to speak, and my mouse is there. We go. Paul Ramirez is back. We'll give him a voice here if he can get connected and up, and then we'll close this out for the day. Okay. Paul Ramirez, if you are able to accept and speak, please do so.
Yeah. Okay. So. This reminds me of what you talked about, soft power. And what is soft power? And his ability to undermine Maduro's authority in Venezuela, or if it's or tell the Iranian president that hey, you're not allowed to make the rules. And in my mind, that's what soft power is. Soft power is this ability to undermine the authority of foreign countries. And this is a topic I particularly enjoy listening to Alexandros talk about this because I feel like he actually understands this stuff at a deeper level than I do. But from my understanding, they're part of the BRICS. They're outside the IMF. They're outside the petrodollar. They're just a low-hanging fruit for the taking. And either if we don't scoop them up, Russia or China will. And that's how I see it. Thank you.
I mean, Trump said this explicitly about Greenland, which was amazing. He said, no, actually, he said one better, which was, we're not going to have China or Russia as neighbors, which, if read super literally, might lend credence to the Alaska independence movement. But other than that, is kind of amazing.
Well, I did lie. I brought up one more request to speak since I like to take the opportunities for that, and we have Mighty Canoe. Just find your mute button there, Mighty Canoe, and we will...
I choose to read that as Wile E. Coyote.
Okay, I'm coming in as your marriage counselor here at the last minute. Gator, I think you have hostess anxiety that you think those of us listening don't like to hear you guys bicker, but I don't see it as bickering. I see it as having an actual conversation, and you don't always agree 100%, and that's fucking great, because, we have so much like consensus building and whatever. The other thing is, this dumb week, in my mind, is a survey of all the propaganda of the week. So don't take offense to Alex's use of the term propaganda. I mean, I kind of feel like you think he's accusing you of falling for propaganda. We all fall for propaganda. It's good. It's not good that we fall for it, but it's well done. And part of what you guys do is you separate the wheat from the chaff, in my opinion. That's all.
What if I have a gluten allergy?
Well, then you better have more chaff, buddy.
Okay.
Because you need your fiber.
I'm really not sure
There's
what
an
chaff
argument
is
it's not-
exactly.
What's that?
I'm really not sure what chaff is specifically.
Well, there's a reason they don't make bread with it.
My sorting algorithm is not going to be too good on that endeavor. So.
I apologize. I was going to say that there's a difference between gluten allergy and glyphosate allergy. So in Europe, they don't use glyphosate as a pesticide on their wheat, and people who are allergic.
But
Paul,
is not. You know what? They use shit tons of it on their chaff.
Wow, we really need to separate that.
We have to end on that note. That is a perfect way to close.
All right, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Have a wonderfully dumb week, and we'll see you on the other end.
I'm sure the next one better.